All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
Welcome back to the Northern Hunter Podcast, everybody. I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Ryan Humphreys.
Joined this week by our guest, Jason Clark. How you doing, Mr. Clark?
I am doing spectacular.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on the show. We're excited to have you on. This week, James is going to miss another one. He is in the field at work again. He likes his job for the travel, but he misses some podcasts every once in a while. Yeah. But that's okay. This week, we have a lot of topics to go over, including our first one. Now, this is a story that we covered a couple of weeks ago. The Iditarod. Now, you're familiar with this famous dog race, are you not?
Oh, yeah.
And are you aware of the drama that has preceded this year's final?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So Dallas Seavey. Let's go ahead and pull up this article here. I already had this pulled up. Alaska's annual Iditarod dog sled race ended with a victory for the ages. One of the biggest names in the sport came from behind after a moose attack to win the grueling, days-long contest for an unprecedented sixth-time winner.
Nice.
Now, for those of us that haven't already heard the story, Dallas encountered a moose just west of Squentna. I believe it was somewhere around the 90-mile mark after the race started. The moose was attacking his dog team. He shot and killed said moose and then gutted it, but supposedly he didn't do it quite up to par to the rules of the race. And so he made an effort to get the guts out. If I remember correctly, he had a quote that said it was ugly, and then he tried to get it off the trail. I know at one point it said that the moose was on his sled. So how he even manipulated a full-size moose off of his sled by himself, and it was 1:45 in the morning.
Wow.
So conditions were just perfect for a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But they penalized him because the Iditarod has specific rules surrounding if you have to kill a wild game animal in defense of life and property while on the race. And we won't rehash all of that. But long story short, he was given a 2-hour penalty in the race, and he still won. So I suppose good for him.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I'd like to have him on and talk about that.
It's not a bad idea.
Kind of hear his side of the story. Yeah, maybe we'll have to reach out and see if that can happen. Seavey, 37 years old, finished the 51st Iditarod in 9 days, 2 hours, 16 minutes, and 8 seconds, and won just over $55,000 for first place. As he neared the finish line, he jumped off his sled and ran with his dogs, pumping his fists. After he reached the finish line, he hugged each dog on his team, and they gave him sloppy dog kisses as they sat on the winner's podium. Yuck.
Yeah, see, I have a dog, but he is not allowed to do that to me.
This one was supposed to be hard, Seavey told the crowd. It had to be special. It had to be more than just a normal Iditarod, and for me, it was. The Iditarod Trail Dog Sled Race takes human and dog teams across 1,000 miles or 1,609 kilometers of wilderness on a trail that traverses 2 mountain ranges, the Yukon River, and a slice of the frozen Bering Sea before ending in the gold rush town of Nome, just south of the Arctic Circle. Well, congrats, Dallas. We're happy for you. We're glad that you weren't a victim of that moose attack, at least you personally. Could have been worse, I suppose. Moving on, discussion I'd like to have here. This is before we get into our later topics. I have a question for you. So, just as kind of a spoiler, part of what we want to talk to you about today, Clark, is snow machining, or as some folks call it, snowmobiling, or as some folks again would call it, sledding. So, what's the right term?
Well, if you hook it to a sled, what is it?
It's a machine.
A sled pulling a sled? That makes no sense. I call it whatever I want to call it, and I just jump on it and scream like a girl and drive it like it's stolen. I mean, I'm not yuppity about, okay, today I need to call it a snowmobile or snow machine. I don't even know what the right proper usage of the words are. I just know that I like to call it a sled, but then I always say, hey, I need to put hook my sled up. Well, that makes no sense. So I'm not yuppity on that part.
So you need to hook up your pull behind sled to what most people call a sled, and that doesn't make any grammatical sense.
Right.
I can see where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
Mariah?
I see where you're coming from. I think most people would, around here anyway, would know what you mean. You know, hooked my sled up to my sled, they would know what you meant, right?
Right.
Either it was two snow machines or it was a snow machine pulling a pull behind, right?
Yeah.
But so what I was telling Dalton before we started this, when he brought this up earlier, was that growing up here in Fairbanks, I didn't hear the term snowmobile for years
Yeah.
as a kid. And when I first heard it, I had to ask what it was. I knew snow machine and sled. Right. You know, and I've heard the opposite, and I've even had to explain snow machine. What are you talking about? When you say snow machine, people think a machine that makes snow. Right. It's a snowmobile or well, a sled.
So you think snowmobile is a better option than snow machine?
No.
You think snow machine is better?
Oh yeah. I think that's just the local jargon. But
Yeah. So
That's a Fairbanks thing, because I growing up around snow machines all my life, and
it's definitely a Fairbanks thing. I know that.
I that's why I still don't know what the proper name is, and I don't really care because that just makes me laugh. I'm like,
Right.
snow machine, snowmobile. If you're going to give me a better price on it, I'll call it whatever you want me to call it.
You know, the other thing for me is with it is the same thing to me was also with four wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little bit more universal.
Yeah.
You know, an ATV being called a four wheeler or a quad.
Yeah.
Although I hadn't heard quad
Yeah. Yeah.
at all. That's not really used up here.
Mm-mm.
It's a four wheeler.
Yeah.
Or it's the wheeler.
Yeah.
Or it's the bike.
The bike?
Oh yeah. I've heard that a lot.
I've never heard them called bikes.
No, really?
No.
Really? No, I've heard it just a bike.
Is that a village thing or is that a town thing?
You know, it might be a my dad thing. It might be.
I could see that being the case.
Yeah. So that might be where that's. But no, definitely, you know, just wheeler, four wheeler.
So growing up, obviously didn't spend a whole lot of time as a young kid around snow machines, but a very limited amount, you know, back on visiting family and whatnot as a little kid. And I remember watching the old Disney movie with Dean Jones called Snowball Express.
Never seen it.
You ever seen that one? That is
It sounds familiar, but it
classic
sounds
Disney
very
movie.
old.
It is very old. It's like Apple Dumpling Gang era. It actually has one of the same actors from the Apple Dumpling Gang in there. Anyway, classic childhood movie. If you haven't watched it and your kids want a good, clean, fun movie to watch, watch Snowball Express. But anyway, it was all about this big snow machine race. And someone in there called it a snowmobile. And I remember thinking as a little kid, like, no, they got that wrong. Like, that's not a snowmobile.
Right.
And that's just a very vivid memory. And then coming back to the States, it was always either snow machine or sled. But then we went out to Sellewick to visit some friends of ours as kids.
Yeah.
And I remember being in Sellewick and driving a sled around, and all the village kids called it a snow-go or a skidoo.
Skidoo's a big one. Yeah.
Just like they don't call a four-wheeler.
It's a Honda.
It's a Honda.
Or sometimes a Polaris.
Every village that I've been in, any four-wheeler that just call
It's
it,
just a
I'm
Honda.
going to
Gonna
jump
take
on
the
the Honda and run
Yeah.
to the store, you know, and jump on the
what kind
Honda.
of Honda do you have? Oh,
Yeah.
Polaris 800. Right.
Exactly. And so it's just always funny. I find it interesting to ask other local Alaskans about just terminology that sometimes, we tend to get a little more defensive than we probably should about it.
So if you break your sled
Yep.
and you're talking to me on the inReach or whatever,
Yep.
and you say, hey, I broke my sled, What did you break?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah. But if I'm letting you know on the inReach, and it sounds like it's an emergency situation, so you should know the context.
Or you've got too much stuff to haul out, and maybe your actual sled is broken.
Could be.
What I would probably do in order to save characters, because it's only 160 characters per text, is I would abbreviate it to machine. I broke my machine.
Yeah, I probably would do the same thing. Yeah.
That way I could distinguish.
Yeah.
But
That worked.
moving on, speaking of sleds, in Alaska, just this year alone, there have been multiple sled wrecks with at least one that ended in a human fatality, unfortunately. Someone was riding out, just joyriding with their friends. It was actually a fellow from out of state, and it was pretty sad ordeal. He was an older guy and just out riding a spot that you've been many times and that I'm going to go here not too long from now just to go have fun, just to ride this spot. It's a very popular place to just ride. It's not very technical if you stay on the main trail, but guys have a tendency to go highway speed for a snow machine. And he got rear-ended, and somehow the sled ended up on top of him. And so there's always a reminder, and we talk about that with regards to the water or using a boat or flying or hiking and being prepared to cross river systems. You just have to be careful. And this time of year, I know it's everybody's favorite time of year to be out in a snow machine and ripping around and enjoying the warm weather, but there's still plenty of snow. But be careful. Keep your speed within a reasonable amount to foresee what's coming and react in time. There's plenty of people that we see ditch diving off the side of the highway this time of the year too. And more than once, we've either ourselves been the victim of our own speedily driving habits, or seen someone else or known of someone else that went off the road. And the first question that's always asked, whether it's you or them, is how fast were you going? And your automatic response is, well, I was just going the speed limit. Well, was that too fast? Well, I didn't think so. Well, apparently so. For the conditions and your reaction time, you just have to keep that in mind. Things get really slippery this time of year. So,
yeah, it's true.
Another one that I wanted to talk about is actually a snow machiner that is now involved in a lawsuit.
Oh, yeah?
You heard about this one?
No.
So Mr. Clark and I were talking about this off air. I'll go ahead and pull up the Anchorage Daily News article that talks about this. This one kind of, this is interesting. This has some farther reaching legal arms.
So let me just guess. It's either he's suing the manufacturer or he's suing the feds for or state for land.
Nope.
Okay.
Partially right though.
You're
partially right.
You're partly there. Actually, that's not on the Anchorage Daily News. I clicked on the wrong article. So the headline reads, Snowmobile company employee charged with reckless driving after slamming into sled team and killing 3 dogs in Alaska. So the fella is from Minnesota, and he was ripping out on a Polaris sled or snow machine.
Sled, yeah.
Sled, probably in some capacity of testing, and he hit a dog team while they were training in, I believe this was in December. I'll just read quickly here. Both a Minnesota man testing a snowmobile for his employer in the Alaska backcountry and the company have been cited for reckless driving after the machine slammed into a sled dog team on a training run in December, killing 3 dogs.
Whereabouts?
Right near Cantwell.
Okay.
The state of Alaska has charged the individual and the Minnesota-based Polaris Inc. on February 8th with the misdemeanor in the crash near the interior Alaska community of Cantwell. Polaris believes its employee was operating safely at the time. The company spokesperson, Jess Rogers, said in an email, "The company is deeply sorry about this unfortunate accident, and we express our sympathy to all involved." An email sent to Johnson was not immediately returned, nor was a message left on a cell phone believed to be his. A spokesperson for the Alaska Attorney General's office said in an email that Polaris was also cited since state law, quotes, contemplates legal accountability when employees act within the scope of their employment on the company's behalf. And then it goes on to talk about Well, this was actually on the Denali Highway. Musher Mike Parker was training dogs on December the 11th on the Denali Highway, which is not maintained in the winter. According to an affidavit from the Alaska State Troopers, Parker was traveling westbound on the highway when he saw a group of snowmobiles coming at him. He said he began using his 1,000 lumen headlamp to make himself known. One snowmobile passed him and flashed his lights at Parker. The second machine slammed into the front of Parker's team, killing 2 dogs instantly and critically injuring 2 others. One of those later died. The troopers interviewed the individual, who said it was dark and blowing snow, which limited his visibility. He said that shortly before the dog team was struck, he saw a faint light while traveling up to 50 miles an hour, but didn't know what it was. No court date has been set. Last November, a snowmobile struck a sled dog team on a training run the same way. The team belonged to 5-time, now 6-time Iditarod Trail sled dog race champion Dallas Seavey, but he was not running the team at the time. 2 dogs were killed in the incident and 7 others were injured. The driver was again cited for negligent driving.
Yeah. One thing to remember when you're driving in nighttime with snow and, this bright light snow everywhere, it reflects, there'll be flashes everywhere. You can't say, oh, well, you've seen a light.
Yeah.
If you did that every time we drive down a driveway,
yeah,
it just lights up around us.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's a little tainted on their view of that, because it's like, come on now.
Yeah.
Every time you see something, if you stopped and slowed down because you've seen a little bit of a light, then there's reflectors and stuff like that along the highway.
From a perspective of somebody who grew up running trap lines and such, or riding into areas where trap lines were dog sled teams use for training, and in multiple areas, both for fun and trapping and all that. I know something I was taught from the moment I jumped on a sled and rode one of those trails was, now dog sled teams use these, and you may not have ever seen one yet, but pay attention, slow down around the corners.
Yep.
Right.
And if you see one, get out of the way. And that's just the way I've treated it. If I see a dog sled team, I get off the trail, and I do my best to not mess up their groomed trail that they have groomed for their dog sleds. It's just a common courtesy, right? They've worked really hard to groom that trail to run their dogs. They don't run their dogs on a snow machine trail.
Right.
Snow machine, horrible with ruts and everything with the sled. They'll run a wheeler down there with the drag box for miles.
Well, how does that work when you have a trap line and they decide, hey, I like this trap line to run my dogs?
So we run the trap line past where the dog sledder would run. It wasn't in the same.
I know, but he decides he wants to go a little farther.
Well, he knows there's a trap line there. There's signs everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got to be courteous of everybody.
Well, and that's also where when you get a chance to talk to him, you let him know what you're doing. You let him know where your traps and snares are. Like, hey, there are some in this area, but they're out of the way, right? And any good musher has control enough of his dogs that they're not going to run into the bushes after a rabbit, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is where the traps are. The traps aren't in the trail for the dogs anyway,
right?
Where the dog sleds. And that's just the way I look at it. And I don't want to. This Minnesota guy, I don't think he knew even to watch for dog sleds. It's kind of or somebody may have mentioned it to him.
When you start off at Cantwell, that's where there's a base for a lot of sled doggers.
Yeah.
And that can do tours right out of there. So literally where he parked, there's probably 50 to 75 dog beds, because it's just coated with dog beds. So he would have a tough time not knowing they're there.
Even in the summertime, there's always that big red pickup truck. I think it's red, and it's got a huge dog box on the back of it. Yeah. It's a modified flatbed. I'm sure you've seen it driving in there. Yeah. But there's always those trucks right there at that's right where they stop plowing the road. Mm-hmm. And, it sounds like the dog team was headed west is what they said. So it was going back to the truck, and these guys were ripping out. And like we said, yes, in the summertime, it's a somewhat maintained graded dirt road, but in the wintertime, it ain't plowed.
Right.
It's a glorified trail that's pretty nice and wide most of the places until it gets drifted over. But there are some signs some places, and there are some delineators in some places. And so what Jason's trying to say is it's really hard to pin it on the sled driver by saying he saw a light and didn't know what it was.
I'm not saying the light.
To be fair, you see all kinds of lights just reflecting off of the snowpack, and you get reflections off of the snow on the trees, or you rip by a sign at 50 miles an hour and you don't realize it was a sign until you go by it. And so there's constantly little reflections. So Does it partially fall on him? Sure. Does it partially fall on the dog musher? I don't know.
This is where
I'm not sure how you could pin it on him.
Is you don't rip where people run their sled dogs. If you want to rip, get off the main trail.
Yeah, but just like I was going down there with my son, and you start going down this highway, and it's a highway,
right? Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just think 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, 50. It seems like it's fast, but when you're on a snow machine on a nice flat trail,
I agree.
50 miles an hour. I mean, you think
like
the
much.
Squirrel migration is going faster than you are.
Yeah.
So, and that's where my son, he was getting with it a little more, and all of a sudden he hit a wind drift.
Oh, okay.
And he went like 25 feet in the air, just shot off like
Whoa,
a bad dog.
Because you don't see it.
Oh yeah,
when it's bright out there.
Yeah.
25 feet.
Yeah, he was airborne. I'm like,
oh,
all right, and he rode it perfectly and scared the snot out of him because he didn't expect it to happen. And but he just had just perfect timing and gave a little zip, and because realistically they go so fast and they're so comfortable when they're doing that.
Yeah.
That you got to be aware of those things, and it is tough because I've had my share of sled doggers. Sometimes they're really nice, and sometimes they can be rude like anybody else.
Right.
And I always will get off the trail.
Yeah.
But I've gotten stuck before.
Yeah.
And there was a trail that I packed down, and I had to get off to let them by, and then I'm digging myself out because
you're just trying to be nice.
I'm trying to be nice, and I didn't have my mountain sled that time. I just had a trail sled, and, and I got the big pig stuck, and and it was fun.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's the way I look at it, especially in the dark. This is widely known. Dog sledders use this.
Yeah. So
I personally am not ripping that, especially at night.
No.
Right.
There was another article that I saw that I didn't quite pull up to include in this. We don't have enough time to cover that, but it was something about dog mushers were being given, or there was a new requirement for some of these organized groups to wear neon reflective, like little dog harnesses, so that it increased visibility in light of this particular incident. Like this is not the only time this has happened, unfortunately. And I'm not a big pet guy. I'm not a dog musher. I can't sympathize exactly with what he went through, but I do know there are people that have dogs. I was working at somebody's house at work just a couple of weeks ago, and they are heavily involved in the dog sled world, and they like their dogs, and that's great for them. That's what they're here for. If it wasn't for dog sledding, they might not even live in Alaska, right? But to them, those dogs are very, very valuable, and so it's from that perspective, I do feel bad for them, and so I think that there should be measures put in place that, hey, maybe there's a little program like, the mushers associations or whatever exists for them. Maybe they can help distribute some of these reflective vests and help prevent some of these kind of accidents. Because, heaven forbid, somebody's going to hit one of those dog teams and they're not going to slow down when they hit the first dog. And somebody might actually get hurt. You could hit the musher, or the sled guy could get thrown off. He could hit a tree or he could roll his sled and get pinned underneath of it. There's all kinds of things that can happen when you're going that fast on a sled. There's no roll cage. People get hurt a lot riding sleds. But anyway, we'll save that for later. Let's jump to a quick break, and then we'll get into our main topic for this week. All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA. All right, Mr. Clark, let's get into your backstory.
Uh-oh.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what your childhood was like. Did you get involved in hunting from an early age? Just kind of give us a little backstory here.
Well, my dad moved up here from Wyoming to actually build the road for the pipeline, build the pipeline. and 69.
Okay.
And moved to Anchorage for a couple of years and then moved down to Anchor Point. He was a commercial fisherman. And so third grade, I remember crying when everybody's glad at the end of school year, they're happy school's over. I remember crying because I knew, my life sucked because I was going to be out in the commercial fishing boat all summer long. So it was like, goodbye, friends. But what I did enjoy it out there is just all the nature.
Yeah.
I mean, to have whales come up and play with you and just sea lions and seals and, all the sea life. It was just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And then we actually ultimately, better spot we were ever fished at was in Kodiak, Kodiak Seining.
Okay.
That was a blast because you get there and, obviously there's deer everywhere. I had a Winchester Model 94,
Yeah.
30-30 lever action, open sight, and we had a 357. So my brother and I, we'd go deer hunting that way. So I'd take the 30-30 and I'd go shoot my deer. Well, he's basically bear bait with the 357 and just hoping once I got a deer, then I would switch. Of course, then I'm all bloody, with my deer.
and you have the small gun.
Yeah, and I have the 357. So yeah, that's what it was. But that's where one of my bucket list is I remember there's a lot of times that I ran from bears because I had a 357, and a 30-30 Winchester. I mean, come on, lever action. Accuracy is not great.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, one of these days, buddies, I'm going to come back and kill your ancestors, because buddy, or your lineage. I'm going to kill your lineage because you know what? I'm tired of running from you. I don't have the money. And I don't have the proper weapon, but one of these days I'm coming back for you.
Coming back for Mr. Clark's revenge. That's awesome. So commercial fishing, let's get into that a little bit. So tell me what that looks like. So you said you get out of school, that's end of springtime, just about sometime in there. And then you're on a boat with your dad, commercial fishing all summer long. From what month to what month was that?
That's basically from May to August, September, whenever school starts back up. It's 20-hour days, 7 days a week. So yeah, it was tough. And it was great. I remember I was the youngest of 5 kids. And the first few years, I was probably a little deadbeat. I was a deadbeat. But ultimately, my older siblings grew up, and then all of a sudden, it was me. So I'm 13 years old, and I'm having to train 20 and 30-year-olds how to work. And it's like, and by then, 13 years old, I've been in it a few years. I know how to work. Yeah. And it was amazing. It's like, why are you want to stay in your bunk? Get out. You get 5 hours of sleep. What's wrong with you? So it was a lot of work, a lot of, fighting the weather. I get seasick. I'd pack a rock with me to put in my pocket to remind me of what, land looks like and pine cones and pine cones don't work because they just crumble in your pocket.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd hit the beach when I came back in and I would change them out, put a new rock or a new pine cone or whatever in my pocket. So the next time it'd last me another 2 or 3 weeks or whatever was out there.
That's funny.
So yeah, it was, I hated it. I despised it at the time. Now I praise the Lord for it because it taught me a good work ethic. And there were just so many things I got to see and experience that I never would have if I would have just been playing in the neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah. So flesh out for us just an average day of fishing on your dad's boat would have looked like from start to finish, just in a nutshell. What did that look like?
Okay. So typically the night before like when we were fishing, the first batch of years, we were halibut fishing. So the night before we would set out like literally 10 or 15 miles worth of line down the ground. So you'd have basically a buoy goes down to an anchor. And then for 10 or 15 miles along the anchor, along the bottom, every 20, 25 feet, is a snap swivel, a gannion, and a hook and bait on it. And
15 to 25 miles of that?
Yeah. And you might break that up in a couple, maybe 5 miles here, 5 miles there. But and so you would basically, if you could set it there for a day soak, for a half a day soak, it would be pretty good. But night soaks with best one.
Okay.
And they're fishing longer. And so you pull the buoy up, pull the anchor up, and you're pulling it. So every halibut's coming up, you're having to take that snap swivel off, hopefully with a halibut or whatever on it. And so then you're, but big halibut, anything about 100 pounds and bigger, you would shoot. Around 100 pounds, you would just get out that sucker and get it in because it's all about production. It's all about getting the next halibut. Go. So you'd wake up in the morning, you go open you'd go, pull up, 5 or 10 miles worth of line, and then you'd turn around and set it right back out real quick, and then you'd grab another one, and then just keep going to one to one to one. The problem is you'd have to find the buoys, and the buoys were, during high tides, they go underneath the water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember being a little turkey. I remember I'm supposed to look for buoys, but I'm like, I knew that when I found that buoy, that means work starts. When we're driving around looking for it, hey, this is great. I'm working, but I did remember, for years I didn't have rain jacket.
Yeah.
And I finally saved enough money to have a rain jacket. And that was so cool. I remember being by the Ninelchik Harbor, and I put my rain jacket on, and I'm like, all summer long, I saved for this nice Helly Hansen rain jacket.
Yeah.
I put it on. I went out in the just deluge downpour. I'm like, oh, I'm invincible.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned the error of my ways, because I realized now my pants were really wet, and it was actually worse. It was easier to all get wet than your pants just getting drenched. And I'm like, so then I had to work double hard so I could buy Helly Hansen rain pants.
Yeah.
So
did you go with pants or bibs?
Bibs. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Bibs. Yeah,
Okay.
always with bibs. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course.
But it was dangerous. I mean, I remember we were putting snap swivels onto the line and letting it out go. You're driving pretty fast.
Yeah.
And at the back end, so hooks are literally flying through the air.
Yeah.
And this guy wasn't paying attention, and he snapped the line too hard. And my dad kept telling him, "Don't snap the line hard, And when you put it on there, you go with it." And all of a sudden, a hook come flying up and caught him in the forearm, and he's about ready to go off the back of the boat. He drops to the back of the boat, and he literally has a couple miles of line behind him and an anchor, all trying to pull him down.
Wow.
And I'm on the other side, so I can't. I'm trying to get to him, and all of a sudden, at the corner of my eye, I see my dad flying through the air with his bib rain gear on.
Yeah.
But it's flying through the air, and he's pulling out his knife.
Yeah.
And he tackles him, and he cuts the line. And praise the Lord, he did, because he literally could have, if he would have cut it just 2 seconds. He could have yanked him off. Both of them could have gone off, because if they would have been dragged in, I couldn't have got the boat turned around.
Yeah.
And did that
To get back to him in time.
But that was my first job. I also got fired at. When the first day went out fishing, I was the youngest, and my dad, he wasn't one to be patient. He's like, okay, go ahead and drive.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, which way do I go? And he was pretty impatient with me. And the thought was, hey, I'm the youngest, put the youngest to driving.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, and he yells some foul words to me. And then he says, I don't care where you go, just go, drive, do what you want to do, drive. Well, you tell a third grader just to go play. So first thing I did, and one thing you don't ever do, is I just put it into a Brody. I'm just like, oh yeah. And so when you're getting 5-10 miles of straight line, not circles, not, turn right, turn left, you got to be dead on straight. And here I'm trying to do a Brody right there. He lost his mind, and I got fired from being the skipper, or not skipper, but the driver,
Yeah.
So, ripe age of third grade, I got fired.
Wow. Yeah. And so at what amount of time did it take to run a whole halibut line? Did that take all day to pull up a whole set of line and then reset it?
It probably, depending on the length, but probably 2 or 3 hours. It just
okay.
depends.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 or 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. And so it just depends how long it is, how the current was going.
And then did you ever drag net, like bottom drag and all that kind of fishing as well?
Later on, when we went to Kodiak, then we went to seining.
Seining, okay.
And so, and that's actually, I still own a seining permit in Kodiak.
Oh, okay.
So that actually I really enjoyed, because I was skiff man. And so that meant I always got to be by the shore.
Yeah.
And on the eagles and the seagulls and all the other, and the sea lions. Well, sea lions and seals weren't our friends. We were usually scaring them off. But it was actually, one time I had a sea lion in the back of my net, and I'm pulling this net that's 1,500 feet long, and I have a little hook in it, and all of a sudden I'm being yanked backwards. And my the whole net, which this is called the money bag right next to you, where all the fish end up at, so it has lots of corks, so it doesn't sink for nothing. And all of a sudden it's going underneath the water, and I'm going backwards. And so I'm like, of course I did what any good son would do. I get on the radio and scream to my dad, "Hey, I got a whale! I got a whale!" He's like, "Just open it up." So I opened it up, and it was a sea lion.
Oh boy.
And he's like 20 feet long, and my boat's only 16 foot long. But he's looking at me about 4 or 5 feet out of the water, just comes right by me, and I have a quick release on my hand because I'm like, he looked at me funny. I was like, going to just say, screw this, because when I'm hooked to the net, I'm really slow.
Yeah.
When I'm away from the net, then I can go fast.
Yeah.
But he left, and all was well.
Those sea lions are something else, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are nasty animals. Nasty. I was guiding a bear hunt last year, and I was on the coast, and I couldn't figure out what this droning noise. It sounded like a diesel engine way, way, way far off. Like sometimes when you're in the moose woods and you can swear that you hear a moose grunt, and all you hear is just this, and you think like, oh, was that a grunt? And you're telling everybody in your camp, shh, bull. But then it's nothing. But it sounds like one of those far, far away noises, right? And I kept thinking in the middle of the night, me and my client are laying there in our tent, and I kept telling him, like, man, for the first 2 nights, I said, that sounds like there's like a big boat out there somewhere way off the coast. And man, that must be a big old boat. And like 3 days in, the weather finally cleared up. And so I was getting a little more free with my glass, just looking in places. It was like noon. No bears were out moving. So I was kind of moving my glass around, and there was an island offshore, a couple of miles. And it looks like, if you ever seen Star Wars, that island that they looked like where Luke Skywalker got put out onto in his old age, this huge rock island, huge cliffs. And I'm like glassing out there with my spotter, and I see all the water just kind of splish splashing. So I zoomed it into 60 power, and it was all sea lions.
Yep.
I've got videos of it. I kid you not, there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. I got footage of them fighting and posturing up and growling and roaring at each other. And I said, that's what that noise is. It's these stupid sea lions.
Wow.
But they are incredibly loud, and they're huge. I remember being blown away the first time I ever saw one in the water swimming around. I was at a fish cleaning dock, and he came up and stuck his head out of the water, and whoa, kind of scares you a little bit. But they are massive animals. They're huge.
Oh, yeah. They've pulled in Kodiak there. A guy was feeding him, pulling a fish out of a net.
Oh, really?
And he wasn't feeding him fast enough. And one came up, bit him on the rear end, and pulled him into the water. And fortunately, once he hit the water, they let him go.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Don't feed the sea lions.
Aptly named a sea lion. Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
I don't know if I've ever seen one.
Yeah. Oh,
they're nasty. Yeah.
Wow.
They're very well named.
What, just out of curiosity, what depth do you run those halibut lines at?
usually like there in the Cook Inlet, it's probably 120 to 200 feet.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I mean, there's other places you might go 200 or 300 feet, but not, you're always watching the bottom, and there's different things in the bottom that you're looking for to try to, get good placement of, your line. And, it's always, it's always a fine line. And we would catch a lot of cool things, octopus. And, a lot of
Are you trying to stay off of all the big structure on the bottom?
No, you want by the structure.
You want all the structure
because a halibut's a predator.
Yeah.
And anywhere there's structure, anywhere there's transition, halibut is going to basically be there to ambush anything coming through there. So does that by nature of the halibut hook that you're using, does that normally not get hung up on all the structure down there then? Well, that's what's crazy. When we first started fishing, they just did the J hook like everybody does.
Yeah.
And then they came up with the circle hook.
Yeah.
And the circle hook, what's crazy about the circle hook is that it doesn't catch as much, but that ain't really what's the big thing about it. The big thing about it is somehow, and I don't know the science of it, but somehow when they bite that, it just hooks them so much better than that J hook ever dreamed of. Because we tried it. We tried it, you literally have 10,000 hooks. Yeah. And so we tried like 1,000. We couldn't get back to the dock fast enough to buy everything into J hooks.
Really?
Yeah, because it was just, there's no comparison.
Much higher efficiency of catch.
The biggest problem with them is for sports fishing is, we always say, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Don't jerk it. Just let them take it.
Yeah.
And then you slowly reel it up. But if you jerk it, like a J hook's great to jerk.
Yeah.
But the regular ones, you got to let them take it.
Yeah.
So,
you got to let them chew on it for a minute.
Yeah. And that's what's great about them when there's 10,000 of them sitting on the bottom. They're fishing by themselves. There's no one there to give it tug when it,
So that was one of my questions then. In 15 to 20 miles of line for just for halibut, how many hooks do you have in the water at one given time?
I don't know how many it would be, but basically 5,280 times 10 miles would be 52,000 feet divided by 25. So yeah, you're going to have a bunch of them. Every 25 feet, 35 feet, 30 feet, you're going to have one of those. So you have a bunch.
Wow.
There's a lot of them everywhere,
Wow.
And then what's tough is sometimes you'll break off just because they will catch the bottom or there'll be something down there and you'll break off. So then you have to run, a few miles to the other end, pull the anchor.
Other end of the buoy.
The buoy and pull it up and hopefully it doesn't become a spaghetti, because sometimes you pull it up and it's all just in a big ball and you're not liking life because you're spending hours trying to get all them hooks out of there.
I can imagine.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So just to kind of wrap back around real quick, no pun intended, but for seining, for seining, you were talking about running the skiff. And so we have a friend that does that in the summertime for a job in a different part of the state, but same type of deal, working on a seiner crew. And so just for folks that might not be aware, we got a lot of listeners that are outside of Alaska. Explain what that process is compared to just setting hooks on the bottom and coming back and pulling the line up.
Okay, so typically you have salmon travel in schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they're traveling back to the rivers, they're traveling in a school. And so off different points, there's focus points where that the fish are going to be more condensed through that area.
Okay.
And you put this net out, and basically it's 1,500 feet long, and it's all, when it first starts, it's all sitting in the back of the big boat, but the big 36 to 42 foot or 52, I think is the max.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you basically, the skiff pulls it off, and the big boat drives away, and it dumps all the net in the water. So basically, picture a point, and there's fishing coming by there. Well, you have this 1,500 foot net stretched out, but it's not a gill net to gill them. It's just a net to circle them.
Just to corral.
And so what we'll do is once the fish hit that net, they'll either go right or left. If they go, typically you put the skiff next to the shore because it's more sacrificial than your big boat.
Yeah.
And so it'll maybe go to the shore. And when you hit the shore, I'll be there driving with the skiff and I'll be plunging. But I'm always right in between the rocks because you always want to, it's always a game you're playing, which is a blast to do because you'd come right up against the rocks and a wave would hit you. And then you'd end up on the other side of the rock. And the next wave hit you and you have to be back on the other side of the rock. And so you're always playing with it, it's just a blast. It's a lot of fun if you're adrenaline junkie like I am. So you're plunging, doing that. And then, you have to do all that and eat. And when nature calls and you're doing all the above and because you can't let the fish out of the net. Well, that's the shore side. The other side, they actually put a curl into the net, a circle almost. So when the fish go out there, they'll actually basically circle around.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that for like 30 minutes. It's about usually you're watching the fish.
Mm-hmm.
And about 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, you close it up. Meaning I take my skiff, pulling the one side of the net, and the big boat pulls the other side of the net. We pull them together. And then the big boat proceeds to pull the net up over the back of the boat. And it went from a 1,500 foot net down to nothing, and slowly. While he's doing that, I'm hooking with the skiff man. I'm pulling the big boat around, and I'm keeping that net in a nice tight circle.
I see.
And I'm keeping him off the rocks. And
okay.
Not actually. One time I got carbon monoxide, and I'm driving along and just idling, and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm in the water in the bottom of the skiff.
Oh.
And I'm like, I stand up. I'm like, did I just fall down? And I guess I was just white. Carbon monoxide hit me. And
wow.
And so I was like, yeah, you have to watch that on calm days. It's rare, but obviously it happens. And
wow.
But I mean, so yeah, that's a skiff man. You're all day long.
Yeah.
Everybody else there, so when they'd come by the boat, every once in a while when you're closing the set, they would throw you a sandwich or something. And
yeah.
So it was, and a good skiff man, he always had two bailers, because you always had to pump, but typically pumps and brakes. So you'd have two bailers.
Yeah.
One to bail water, one to sacrifice if number two calls, So, so you always were prepared because stuff like that happens. I mean, it's just, you're depending on how bad of a cook because you're always taking turns being the cook. So
Oh,
if someone was a bad cook the night before, you're going to pay for it the next day. And so that baler usually got tossed over.
Yeah, I had a guy that worked for me a few years ago that was on a commercial fishing boat. They worked out of Washington mostly. It was interesting. They'd come out of Washington and come up to like Sitka and hit different ports. But I think they were seine netting. But he was the cook. Like he was such a good cook, they just let him be the cook apparently. But
Well, see, that's where the good cooks, when we come every night, would go back to the tender, and the tender, we'd have to be tossing fish into the net. I mean, into the brailer to count them and to weigh them and all that other stuff. Well, if you had a good cook, we would just tell the cook, you know what, you just cook while we load up. But you always had your favorite hat, and you would put your hat down deep over your eyes, and you duck and chuck. When you toss a fish, it's just throwing slime, a 10-foot swath of slime around. So you don't look and when someone else calls your name, you do not look up when you're in the fish hole tossing fish. It's just, good cook is always valuable because they could come and make that food. So when you're done, you have a great food and he's happy and we're happy.
Wow. So you were very, very involved then as a young guy growing up in Alaska then.
Oh yeah.
And so, I didn't quite catch that just earlier on. You said you were born up here then.
No, I was born in Wyoming.
You were, okay.
I was 5 years old when I moved up here.
Okay. So your dad came up to work on the pipeline project and then got into commercial fishing later on. So what about hunting then? You talked a lot about childhood involved in fishing, and it sounds, obviously a lot of childhood misery, maybe not a whole lot of time for hunting, it might not sound like, with the commercial fishing life and then back to school.
Well, I had Kodiak, so that was good. A lot of good hunting there. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I also, around Anchor Point, down by Homer, grew up there, and I remember my dad always loved to hunt, but he never really had time to actually take us out and take us hunting much.
Yeah.
So we didn't really do it much. But I remember when I was in high school, I think it was junior, senior in high school, and my brother and I decided that, we both figured out where this moose was going to be at. And so he goes one way, and we lived on the Anchor River. And so he's going to go one way, I'm going to go the other way. We had flipped to see who gets to go the right way.
Yeah.
I figured he was going to have the right way. And so all I was trying to do was cover my half faster than his so I could get to his half to shoot the moose. And I was going through perfect river bottom willows, just where moose absolute love. I didn't know at the time. And absolute deluge downpour, and I was running through this, because my mom just made me this new rain gear that's supposed to breathe and blah, blah, blah. And she was a great sewer. And so I'm like discovering, real hunter, and all I cared about was get there before my brother did.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I jumped in nice little forker horn and he jumps up and I'm like, oh, and I thought, oh, it's just a cow. And then, oh, wait a second here. That actually is horn sticking through them willows. Shot him and he was done. And that was a blessing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I bet your brother wasn't none too happy about that.
he smiled like I would have smiled too. And he was happy, but I'm sure he was.
Right.
Like, yeah. So
Jason outran me again.
No, I shot him on my side.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I shot him on my side.
Wow.
That's what I was now it was good for me to experience because then it's like, okay, don't get to there where you think they're going to be at.
Yeah.
Hunt where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Slow it down, grasshopper, and you think that's now I know more that I know that nice river bottom with good cover and stuff like that. When, early in the season, he's going to be hanging there.
Yeah, sure. So you get out of high school. Did you stay in Alaska through the whole time up until now, or did you do any moving around a little bit here and there? Or
well, I went to Flagstaff, Arizona for a semester, then Sacramento for a semester in college, and then 4 years at Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana, and had a blast. The problem is I was so poor. I mean, I had a wife and 2 kids when I graduated, so I had no money. And so I couldn't ever pay for out-of-state hunting license. So I would tell my friends, I'm like, how about I'll be your packer.
Yeah.
Just let me go hunting with you.
Yeah.
And I will gut, I will pack, I will do whatever you want me to do. Just take me out hunting. Because, it was a blast. And one thing I've seen down there, they're better set up than Alaska is because they actually have a better bow hunting is tailored to more. Alaska really doesn't have a good bow hunting program. That, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have much advantage here.
Yeah.
And so I got into it down there, but I get into Alaska and I do it, but not.
Yeah.
It's not such a great advantage like it is down there.
Yeah. Yeah. What were you studying in college?
Construction engineering.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that kind of worked out then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I started off to be in the Air Force to be a fighter pilot, and that 2020, 2030 on my eyesight shot me down. And,
okay.
Lord had a different plan for me, but I cried like a baby when that. It was tough. It was, because I had my first semester, I passed the officer examination test. To be a co-pilot, my first time, just like a month or two into the college, and so they're all excited, like, oh, you got 5 years to get your pilot spot, and I qualified so fast. At least for the co-pilot, they're like, good positioning, but you have to have perfect eyesight. Now, ironically, 30 years later, I met a guy out at Eielson Air Force Base, and same age, same everything, and he had done everything I wanted to do. And then I told him about my little dream and being a fighter pilot, and I got out because of my eyesight. And he tells me, oh yeah, by the way, there's glasses that you can put on to pass the test.
Really?
And so you can cheat the system. And he said, yeah. And it was funny because I remembered right after that happened, when I got my eyes checked, I was at Sears getting my eyes checked. And the guy, he told me, okay, by the way, you got 20/30, and I knew that was it. I was not going to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
But when he told me this, he went into talking about putting on glasses for that athletes do it so they have better depth perception. I didn't understand what he was telling me. He was telling me how to cheat the system.
He was trying to give you a little, trying to throw you a bone.
Yeah. So
what if you were to have like corrective eye surgery? That still doesn't get you in?
No.
You have to have perfect natural eyesight.
Yeah. And nowadays, I guess they go into your eyes and tell you what your eyesight is. They don't even have you read that.
Really?
Yeah, their science is a lot better now. But
interesting.
It kind of makes sense. I mean, because so much of it's all, computerized and digital now with even with what you're doing in the cockpit now from even what it was 30 years ago.
Right.
Wow. Very interesting. So you got out of college. Did you come right back up to Alaska then?
Yeah. Came back to Fairbanks, and it was crazy because when I got married to my wife, who was from Fairbanks, I told her I'd never live in that godforsaken cold Fairbanks. I'd come up here for sports, and I'm like, oh, it is too cold.
Yeah.
And wow, I shouldn't say this where everybody can hear it, but I absolutely love Fairbanks because there's so much more hunting and fishing and playing to do up here. If you like to do those type of things, this is the place to do it.
And there's elbow room.
Right, exactly.
There's not a ton of people. I mean, there's good hunting and fishing if you live in South Central, Wasilla, Matanuska-Borough, that part of the state, sure. And there's more people that live there. But that's, again, part of the problem is you're a lot more likely to bump into somebody if you drive a couple hours. Up here, you're a lot less likely.
Right.
You go a few hours and good chances that you're going to be by yourself. So you got to watch your tail and make sure that you make good decisions.
You can drive 30 minutes. You walk into the woods, you're not going to see another soul.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No.
So then you came back to Alaska. Did you get back into hunting right away, or was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I had wife and 2 kids, but I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get back into hunting. And I didn't have nice quality equipment because I was so poor, paying college debt and wife and kids and all that stuff. But, I still could go. And I got into hunting. I really love calling moose. That is my favorite one. It's probably my favorite thing to do. I love talking to moose.
Would you say that moose hunting overall is your favorite type of hunting up here?
I wouldn't put anything to a favorite because it's a favorite when it's that season.
Yeah.
And during bear hunting season, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
During spring bear or bear baiting, whatever the season is, that is my favorite. Because otherwise, if I said it's my favorite, my wife would say, "Oh no, that's not your favorite." No, that's all my favorite.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's a wise answer. Yeah, it's hard to have a favorite up here, but yeah, well, that's great. So then I guess we'll just go ahead and fast forward in the last year. Now, just for some context, folks might be wondering, how we know you, who you are. You're a local business owner here in town, and we know you from attending the same church for a number of years now. And so that there's kind of an acquaintance there, and you've done some hunting with Mariah's dad, actually. And you did some bear baiting last year, and it sounded like you had a couple of fun times out there. Did you do that all by yourself, or were you kind of tag teaming it with a couple other guys? Or?
Well, no, I did it by myself. The first day, though, I had a friend come out there with me, and I had dropped the bait the week before, and I was coming out, and I'm just going to put up my stand.
I heard this story.
Yeah.
And he's going, and he's just putting some scent out in a couple of different trails, just to bring something in.
Yeah.
I'm just hey, just go to this point over here and just mark stuff up a little bit. And he's doing that, and I'm hearing all of a sudden he's away from me, and I'm hearing something huffing at me, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, wait a second here. So I'm trying to put. Of course, I took my stupid stand right out of the box, so I'm putting the stand together with a pair of vice grips, and he's getting more excited as time goes on. So the guy comes back, and we're both putting this thing together. We get it all together. We're trying to figure out how both of us is going to get up in the tree with this thing, because I'm like, oh yeah, come on, baby.
Yeah.
It's going to happen tonight, because he wouldn't leave. I'm getting all excited. We get it all put together, and then it just flops. It basically falls down, because I had the first part that I put together, I put it on backwards. So every bolt that I put together, I had to take it back off while the bear's huffing at us to put it all back together. By the time we was done, he finally decided, okay, you guys are idiots. I'm not coming in.
Had you already set up this bait ahead of time, or
a week before? I just put
1 week before.
1 week, I put the bait out, and I should. Now I know when I put that bait out, that stand's going up that time. So I just gonna walk right in there. So
there's a good tip for everybody there. New bear baiters.
Yeah.
Your tree stand does not come ready to unfold and hang on the tree.
Yeah.
I went and bought one last year. I had to put one up. I needed another tree stand because I had the guy going with me. So I was like, I'm just going to go buy one on the way. And I put it together on the trailer with the tools that were in my truck before we headed to the bait. Still not ideal. But
but every one of them bolts has a nice Loctite on it.
Right.
Nylon washer that just makes
dropping them in the mud, and
Oh yeah, that was. And then you're also trying to do it, but also pay attention to see if that bear's coming in or not on you or not.
Making a ton of noise.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I would just be tempted to all right, well, let's just sit down and be quiet, and let's just let this guy come in. We'll shoot him, and then we'll put the stands up later, maybe. But I don't know. So we'll see if he comes back this year. It's right around the corner.
Right. Well, and it was really disappointing because I got some pictures of, at least I think it was him, but him and his big brother. And I mean, got a nice, good rump shots, and one was really big and one was okay.
Yeah.
And then about a week later, a bear came in, and I thought for sure, okay, he's not the one. And now after I passed him up, I'm pretty sure he was the one. He was the bigger one. But it's just part of it is learning the size.
Yeah.
Getting a good perspective of how big your bait tub is and trees around it, all the other stuff. You got to really be mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, bear baiting is a ton of fun. And it is a good learning curve, and it takes a while. Like you said, I think black bears are twice as hard to judge as brown bears are on the coast, because just the difference and the drastic difference in size. Like a big brown bear looks like it's twice the size of an average size brown bear. But a really big black bear, like 6.5 foot, and a 6 foot black bear or a 5'10" black bear, it's not as huge of a difference. Now, if they're standing there together on camera, it's easy to tell. But when you're sitting in the stand, unless you've looked at a lot of bears, I've heard that story quite a bit, and I'm guilty of it myself. I shot one time that I thought was a lot bigger than it was, and now it was still. It's actually one of the ones hanging up there on the wall. I thought that he was the bigger one that had been coming in there, that I estimate now to be over 6 foot, but he ended up squaring at like 5'10", which is about your run of the mill.
I mean, that's a shooter.
Yeah,
shooter for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fully mature adult black bear, average size, nothing. I mean, it's not going to win any trophy contests, but it wasn't the one that I thought, and that was early on. And so I kind of learned from that. And now, if a huge one walks in, you pretty much know it right away. Like, whoa. And there's a lot of characteristics to them that over time it just, but that's part of the fun though.
Well, part of it also was, let's face it, I mean, where do we go to church? there's a lot of great hunters there. And I didn't want to show back up church having shot the smallest bear.
Oh, trust me, I got multiple bears that are much smaller than that one probably was.
I was like, oh, if this is a small one, I'm never going to live this sucker down.
Yeah,
And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let him go and wait for his big brother to come in.
It's all in good fun though. I mean,
Oh,
I've shot one small black bear. Mariah's shot one small black bear.
Both of us shot them with way too big a gun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you shot that one with a 45-70.
at like
I shot
8
one with a
feet.
375 Ruger. they were both small.
Both
but
about the same size, probably. Yeah.
yeah, they were pretty small. I mean, and yeah, you come home, and I remember bringing that bear home, and my dad gave me a hard time for it. I was just a teenager.
Oh, we all
and-
did.
Well, yeah, definitely Mariah as well. But my father-in-law, he wasn't my father-in-law at the time, but everybody, the classic jokes. Yeah, did you have to scare his mom off, or you have to wipe the milk off his lips for the pictures? And then comes the ribbing. And until you shoot another big one,
Mm-hmm.
that's the story that sticks with you. And that really kicks in the incentive to shoot another bigger bear. Which luckily I shot 2 that spring, and the second one was over 6 foot, and so I redeemed myself quickly. But yeah, that's not one you want hanging over your head very long. So moose hunting, you had a story that you told me about last year that I think bears worth repeating. So let's get into that.
Well, normally when I see a moose 2 or 3 miles away,
Yeah,
typically I can call him into me. Lord's blessed, and I can say I'm pretty good at calling moose into me. This last year was the exact opposite.
okay.
It was, I could not bring them into me for some reason. They just wouldn't come.
And this is all through September season.
Yeah, this is all. Yeah,
Okay.
this is middle of September,
Okay.
the 15th, after the 15th, typically. And I've talked to them earlier, but after the 10th, I usually can bring them 2 or 3 miles to me.
Yeah.
And I get up in a great spot them, and I can easily bring them in. Well, last year wasn't that year, and so we had to go a couple times, go down to where the moose are at. And every time we did, I'd get somewhat close, and then I would try calling again, and they just were, I don't know, they were well trained or what, but I mean, we're way, way, way back there. There ain't hardly anybody else hunts in these areas,
Mm-hmm.
and the moose was just going back into the woods. And we hunted 3 or 4 days like this, and then like the second to last day, right at the end of the season, this is like the 20th. And I had seen one about 2 or 3 miles away, and he had a nice little harem around him. And I'm like, oh yeah. So we're thinking about going, and all of a sudden behind him, this big Godzilla one comes up, and he comes in and scares that other one out. There wasn't even a fight. The other one's like, no, I'm not even going to fight for this.
Takes off. Yeah.
He takes off. And so we're like, okay, forget it. So I drove my Argo about 2 miles. And the last mile, I just walked down to him. I'm like, you know what? I am not ruining this hunt. I have all day long. I'm going to just take it slow and easy. I work my way down to him. I'm about 350 yards away, and great visual the whole time, as far as sound and wind. Everything's working in my favor. But the last 350 yards, it's going to be through a bad willow patch. Either that, or I have to travel basically like 3/4 of a mile around and try to come at a different way. But there's cows over there on that side. So I'm like,
Okay.
and I'm thinking 350 yards. I mean, I've killed moose at 350 yards before.
Yeah.
Well, I got a nice little rest, got calm, got everything, got my windage, everything's going perfect. And I take a shot and take another shot and take another shot. And quickly I noticed he wasn't going down, and he was running around. And then I think the 4th shot, I heard a whop. And so I'm like, okay, I knew I had him.
Okay.
And so then he runs into the willows, and I'm just mad at myself. I'm like, come on. I mean, it's been a long time since I've taken that many shots at a moose, and I've had my misses before, but it not like that. It's been a lot of years. Anyway, so he runs in the willows, and then I remembered one of my cardinal rules is usually before I take go after the moose, I take a picture where the moose was at forward, and I turn around and I take a picture backwards. So then that way, you get a perspective where you're at.
Yeah.
Because at 350 yards, it took me 20 minutes to do it. Walking through the swamp and the willows and the briar. I mean, it's a nasty area.
Yeah.
Once I got up to them, then it was a 200-yard stretch that I'm trying to figure out where I was at.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been there.
And normally I always have a picture to say, okay, right here. Because I'd say I'm definitely a above average blood tracker. But if you can't find that first spot of blood,
Yeah.
you're in trouble.
Uh-huh.
So I'm trying to find it, and I'm really mad at myself for not marking it. I'm just like, okay, you dummy, you know better than this.
Yeah.
So I'm walking through these willows, and they're about 10, 12 feet tall. And I'm like, you know what? If you're not smart enough to take a nice shot, and have better placement than this, you don't deserve this moose. Well, then all of a sudden, like 12 feet away from me, this moose stands up in the willows. And he just right there, and it's so thick that I couldn't shoot. And I'm like, and I just know, like, man, if he charges me, there's no way
He's going to run over you.
He's going to run my rear end over. So I tried to be quiet, and he finally moves around a little bit. So I was able to sneak a shot in. And it was another, when those stupid things happen, you just keep doing more stupid things. And I shot him right in the rump. I mean, the shot that you never, ever, never take, I shot him right square in the rump. And I'm just like, because I pulled the trigger and I see a splurt of blood splurt out its rear end. I'm like, what? No, that's not where I aimed. It was very close, and it could hit the willows, but it was just, plus trying to look through scope.
Yeah.
That close, and you're 10, 12 feet. It's tough, but still, it was bad shooting. So he runs out in the clearing, and I think pretty sure I got another shot when he was running out in the clearing, and he goes and lays down.
Yeah.
And by then I'm starting to get low on my bullets. My bullets, about a mile away up in my Argo, and the cows are getting really aggressive with me. Because let's face it, the cows, they're not stupid. They're like bulls.
How many cows did he have with him?
Like 5 or 6.
And they're all hemmed up there in the brush with you.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, they're getting really aggressive with me, and I'm like, well, I didn't. And plus, and the 2 days before, I seen a nice grizzly come running right exactly through this area, coming charging through here. And I've seen some piles of dung that are probably 18 inches diameter, about 4 or 5 inches tall. So it was a nice grizzly through that area, and I'm like, I'm excited about it, but I'm really not wanting to be all bloody without any bullets, in my rifle. I got my pistol, but so I come up behind the bull, and I could see he's, I got him.
Yeah,
he's going to die, but he's going to be slow, and I don't like them to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I come up behind him, and just where I'm not going to be kicked, but back there, and he's looking at me, but I'm thinking, oh, these are some nice set of horns. I've shot in bigger horns, but never. This one's the prettiest one. 4 on one side and 4 brow and 5 brow. So I'm liking the look of this one. So
that's
I'm
a nice bull.
So I'm thinking, you know what? When I shoot this thing with my 44, I need to make sure I do not ruin these horns. As my shooting's going pretty bad right now, I'm feeling a little self-confident. So I shoot, but I shot a little bit low and didn't get the brain, and it just hit his nasal and made him really mad. And even though he had 3 legs, that sorry jumped up and charged me. Yeah. I ran like a girl, man. I'm like, okay, that's it. I ran right back in those willows, and I'm like, that moose can die alone, because my wife's like, well, why didn't you shoot it again? Like, because there's no way, 1,500-pound moose charging me.
Yeah.
Thought of shooting again is not on it. I'm like, run.
So did he stop when he got to the brush line where you retreated into?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He stopped there, and
So he was just trying to run you off.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I've heard of the phrase. I don't mean to be mean here, but I've heard of the phrase "wounding to death."
Well, it's funny because my nephew, he's like, well, I heard 3 shots, and then I heard a bunch of shots from someone else. He thought, he didn't know that all them other shots were my shots, and I'm like, well, yeah, all that other shooting, that was your uncle. He's being an idiot, But part of it is I have a 338 Winchester mag.
Yeah.
I know that once I get to 200 grain bullets, it gets a little squirrely. I forgot that. And so when a friend offered me, hey, I got some bullets, and he reloaded, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I completely forgot the thought of, okay, this gun, I do not shoot 200 grain bullets through it because they just get squirrely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it probably wasn't just that, but I know I've had problems with that before. Usually about 220, 230 is a better bullet for that gun.
Yeah.
But realistically, if you can't hit the broadside of a barn, even at 350 yards, wide open, there was no willows in the way when I shot him. There was no excuse. I had a perfect rest. The wind, I was already accounted for. Everything was there, but it was just some stupid things going on.
Did you take that to the range later and check it and make sure everything was?
No,
Probably just going to go back to shooting 225s.
Yeah. Actually, my nephew took it, and he's more into guns than I am, so he's going to, and I want to put a new scope on it, and it just it's a Leopold scope, but I've had problems before, and then I don't know if it was the scope or if it's the 200 grain, but I don't know. Whatever I'm going to do is, it's going to be different next season.
There's a whole litany of things that, if a gun's not shooting good, you got to check the tension of the action screws that hold the stock to the action. And you got to check your scope mounts. Are they secured to the receiver? And then are the rings holding the scope in securely? And if that's not off, if that's off, then the whole system is going to be off. You can have the best scope in the world and the best rifle in the world, but if your torque isn't right, then it ain't going to shoot. And so there's all kinds of things. And then,
and if your bullet weight isn't stable with your rifle. And,
exactly. And then optimum bullet weight for that gun, because some 338s love shooting light for caliber, 200s, even 180s. Hornady factory loads some 180 grain 338 Win Mag. And then other 338s, I've seen that they won't shoot anything less than 225 grain weight. And they prefer 250s. And so it's such an individual platform from one gun to the next. And so hopefully he figures it out, and next year you can one shot, bang, flop, and it's over.
Well, but the problem is I'm sort of like, my dad had a rule. He said, don't put an old saddle on a new horse. No, excuse me. Don't put a new saddle on an old horse. So if you buy a new saddle, you need to buy a new horse too.
So if you're buying new glass, you just need to buy a new gun.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell my wife that, but she's not really liking that idea so much. But
Well, we are here for your side if you decide to go that route. I think you were talking to me about that a few months ago, asking me about a couple of different options. But man, there's a lot of good guns out there. I mean, Weatherby, for instance.
Oh yeah, Weatherby.
Weatherby makes some nice
guns.
And
then you can get some custom loaded hammers.
We can set you right up with some hammer bullets.
There you go.
I mean, I heard of an old outfitter one time. Actually, my boss at my 9-to-5 job is friends with this old time outfitter from up north. And he had a client show up at one point out to guide camp and for a hunt. And this old outfitter had a couple of bullets, and he would, if I'm recalling this right, he would write with Sharpie or colored marker on some of the tips of the bullets, just like color the tips, just so that he knew what each of them was. Like he had different bullets kind of all in the same boxes. And he had some, I don't know if it was green marker or black marker, whatever. And the client asked him, well, what kind of bullet is that? And he goes, oh, those are meat-seeking bullets. those never miss. So you need to get some meat-seeking bullets, Jason.
Yeah. I do know that I have a 300 Winchester.
Yeah.
I know that I will not have the same colored bullets on a 300 Winchester as I do my 338.
Yeah.
Because Mariah, when I went hunting with your dad out caribou hunting, we get out there, and all of a sudden I went to put my bullets in my gun. I realized, oh, oops, I have the wrong bullets for this gun.
Oops.
So funny story. My buddy from down South Central.
Yeah.
He has a 300 Win Mag, and he went out grizzly bear hunting by himself. And just a couple of, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And he shot a monstrous grizzly bear by himself. And in a spot that he and I have hunted many times over, shot just a tank of a grizzly bear. And it didn't go down with one shot. And he was shooting 180 grain factory ammo out of the box that he's shot a bunch of before. And the shot, I think, from what I've been told by him, and this is in the moment, it's heat of the moment. It was about a 200-yard shot, steep uphill, kind of through some alders, and it came through a gap. And he pulled the trigger, and he thinks that he hit it a bit far forward, kind of into the shoulder, which anybody who knows a lot about bears knows that's getting on the edge of not a great shot, right? And so he reloads quickly to fire again. And something happens with the cycling of his gun, and it doesn't feed quite right. It goes in, but then he has a hard time getting it out of the chamber, and He pulls it out, shell falls on the ground, loads another one in, fires again. By that time, the bear's gone. And so he's looking on the ground at this cartridge that he has sitting there that wouldn't feed properly. Looks at the head stamp, 338 Win Mag. Out of a box of factory ammunition. Factory.
So who was it? Wasn't it Chris who was at the range and he had he put a 30 through a 6mm or something crazy, or 6mm through a 223? Yeah. Yeah. And it was shorter case than the longer case. And
6mm to a 2 through a 223
something like that.
Wouldn't that blow it up?
Well, it didn't.
Really?
He was on the podcast and he told the story. I believe maybe it wasn't live, but if anybody remembers that episode or wants to go back and find it, and
that might have been one of the ones that I missed in October.
It could have been. It was with Chris, so maybe that was one of those.
Yeah,
back then. But yeah, he was talking about being at. I think it was Chris, and he was talking about being at the range and having 2 or 3 different kinds of ammo sitting on the bench, and he's swapping out guns or whatever, picking different guns up and shooting. And he picked up. It may have been like I don't remember what it was, but same diameter and head case, but it was shorter. And he stuck it in the wrong gun and shot it, and it was too big of a bullet, but it just cut the bullet down to size.
Boy, you run the risk.
Must have been it wasn't a copper, right? It wasn't a
it couldn't.
Wasn't no hammer bullet.
Man.
But yeah, I know he shot, and then he realized what happened, and it was fine, but
I bet he was sweating for a few minutes after that. Just wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was not. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why that made me think about that. But yeah, that problem that my buddy had, having the wrong caliber bullet, with the wrong cartridge altogether. But like you said, you brought 338 ammo for your 300 or vice versa. Yeah, it's pretty bad how close they look alike. Oh, yeah. And I have a 7 mag and a 300 Win Mag. And when they're just sitting side by side, if you just have a bunch of loose ammo sitting around, you're looking at the head stamp. Because it's similar enough that you will get them confused eventually. That's not something that you want to be doing.
Well, you know how I was at one point in my life with the back seat of my old blue pickup truck. There was always a rifle of some sort or two under the seat, and usually 100 rounds of ammo of various sorts in the back. And I remember going hunting one time and seeing a box of ammo on the floor in the back seat and thinking, "Oh, perfect, that's my 30-06 ammo or 300 Win Mag ammo." I don't remember, but I shot the same ammo for both. But it was just the box, right? And the 300 Win Mag box is significantly bigger than the 30-06 box. But I didn't look that close. I just saw the 3, and it was, at the time it was Barnes, and thought, I'm good to go. Got where I was going, and no, it was not the right kind of ammo.
No, and that's why I will not buy the same style bullet or a color, but whatever the box is always going to be different. I don't care. I'll figure it out.
Now that I reload, all my stuff is in custom boxes and labeled and all that kind of nonsense.
Got masking tape on there and all that jazz. Yeah. You ever done any reloading?
With my dad years ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was a lot of work, and so when he got out of it, I'm like, no, I don't want it. And he actually gave me a die or whatever the
press.
Sold it at a garage sale a bunch of years ago, and didn't buy his stuff when he sold it for pennies on the dollar. And now I'm kicking myself. I'm like, dummy. That would have been so nice to have that gear. But, I was young, dumb, and happy, didn't think I needed it. And now I really, really wish I had it.
Well, I'm not kidding when I say if you want to try out some stuff, we've got a lot of the equipment. And as long as you buy the dies, which is just a couple of little parts of the whole set, we'll help you develop a load for your guns.
It's fun. It's so much fun. The technical part of it, and just get, I got into it a year ago now, started really getting into it. And I own like 7 reloading manuals now.
He's kind of obsessed. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I have a bullet and a cartridge I'm studying, I'll just have, there's manuals stacked up next to my bed that I'll think about, I wonder about this cartridge and that cartridge, and pulling, whatever manual has those cartridges and the bullet weights and types I'm looking at and comparing them all. And I've even bought manuals that aren't in print anymore. And I had to get on eBay and wait till they popped up.
Yeah.
Starting
to get fancy.
It costs a lot of money, but hey, you know what? Now I got one.
Yep. Oh, no,
and I can sell it for what I paid for it.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
So let's wrap back around to something that you mentioned real quick. You talked about on your moose hunt that you were using an Argo.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of means of transportation in Alaska. 4-wheelers, snow machines, 6-wheel, rigs. we just call them 6-wheelers, but it's just a 4-wheeler with an extra axle on the back of it and a nice long spacious bed on it. And then we got side-by-sides, and then we have Argos, and then we have, what's those rigs? Sherps. You ever seen those?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The big balloon tire. It looks like a big tank with balloon tires on it. But so you chose to go with an Argo for a lot of your moose hunting when you're on land access anyway.
Right.
Tell us why you made that decision and not one of the more popular choices.
Well, I had a 6-wheeler, a side-by-side 6-wheeler, and I had a friend that had an Argo. And when he's dragging me through the mud, and the mud and water is coming over the cowling into my lap, and he don't even have tracks, and he's pulling me through this stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be that guy having to be pulled everywhere, And so I got one. Now an Argo is the most miserable vehicle to run out there. It has no suspension. You will not like life riding it. And
they're not fast.
No. And we'll go on a few days there. We go about 140 miles on them. So they're miserably slow and they're horrible to drive. You got to watch the maintenance on them, but most things you do have to watch maintenance, but the places they put you in are spectacular.
And you can take everything with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the problem is you pack too much stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But so it is nice because that's my Argo. I set my Argo up so I can actually sleep inside my Argo.
I noticed that in a couple of videos that you've put up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got a little sleeper in there.
Yeah.
Because that looks pretty cush.
It is nice because I like to go out and away from everybody else. And once I'm into an area, I'm not going to have a fire. I'm not going to have nothing. I just want to be quiet. And so I just want a small footprint and I don't want to drive in and drive out. And because there's, where we're at, there's probably not going to be another hunter there, but it doesn't matter. There's still moose, that smell you're impacting there. And, where I shot that moose, it was like 100 yards away from the day before I was actually camping. And if I would have stayed there, there's a better chance I might have, because I'd stayed there a couple of days. Yeah. And just, they had positioned themselves back in, but who knows, because of the scent, they might not move there. But yeah, I love the Argo for that is they have a, big enough cab and go things, but you can break axles, you can break chains, you can, so there's no perfect vehicle, but I have a 6-wheeler, 4-wheeler 6-wheeler. Love that sucker. Man, that thing is the dog. But when you're fighting weather and you're freezing, I mean, I've had people, on the way out to where we go, I've had 6-wheelers just look at us with nasty looks because I'm sitting in my T-shirt.
Right. Because it's hot in there.
Yeah.
Those things produce a lot of heat.
Yeah. I'm with my, T-shirt driving through there, and they're in their nice, Sitka gear or, Kuiu, whatever gear.
Yeah.
Just miserable, hating life.
Soaked.
Just getting soaked and sideways rain. And I'm like, sucks to be you.
Been there. Been the guy saying that and been the guy thinking that. Yeah.
So
So you've ridden with a guy, though, that has one of those 6-wheeler side-by-sides.
He has a regular side-by-side, not a 6-wheel side-by-side.
I thought you were running with a guy that had one of those new Commanders or whatever.
No, it was a Can-Am Defender.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And it was just a normal 4-wheel side-by-side.
The 6-wheeler ones look nice.
Oh, I went with
they do.
A friend of mine has the Commander.
Okay, yeah.
And there was places that we went with that Commander that I would not take my Argo. There was other places that I would take my Argo that I wouldn't take it.
Right,
so
right.
each one
was
has
that
this
as far as like hill climbing or side hilling with the Commander that you wouldn't do with the Argo?
It was just through the trees. I mean, because it's so big and so powerful.
Yeah.
You can go over trees. I mean, my Argo, I've gone through over a lot of trees. I have tracks on it.
Okay.
But still, it's just, there's just something about it. It was crazy. It was, really nice. It was comfortable. And
And is your Argo a 4x4 or a 3x3?
4x4.
4x4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And you want to, if you ever get an Argo, which I don't want people to get an Argo because that means more competition. But I like, you want the better quality ones.
Yeah.
Because they have homeowner ones that are
the
just
1990s Argos are talk about maintenance.
Oh yeah, but even the new Argo, there's entry level and there's a little bit better.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You want the better ones, because you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Are they all chain drive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All chain
Now
drive.
the newer ones have a little better steering system. They've got better seats. those old seats were really short, like little 6-inch backs on them or whatever stupid.
Yeah, they're still pretty small. I mean, I wanted to put a better seat on mine, but I know better because that uncomfortable seat dictates your speed, and which is good because there's a reason you're chattering your teeth off is because you're going too fast. You're going to break an axle, you're going to break a chain. Slow down, grasshopper.
So the reason I don't want an Argo yet. I'm sure maybe one day I'll get to a point where
I want one bad.
And the reason is I've gone hunting enough with my dad who has one. And you're right, they're miserable. They're also miserable for everybody that's on wheelers going into the spot where you don't need an Argo, but he takes it because he can take everything with him, right?
And he just tears it all up.
And no, I tear it more with my wheeler for sure.
Oh yeah.
So then why don't you like it having to follow him?
Because I'm not following him. He's following me, and I'm waiting for him.
Just speed
I can make
wise.
2 trips and carry a bunch of gear in faster than he can make that one trip, right?
Yeah, but he can bring in the whole camp, kill a moose, and carry everything out with the moose in one trip.
No, his camp size, no. The moose is a trip.
but that's what we see the first 15 miles that we go out there.
Yeah.
All the groups of wheelers and everybody else, they come zipping by us and they're laughing at us. Yeah. And then the next mud hole, we pass them.
Yeah.
You're right. But I don't like rattling. That's part of my thing.
2-3 times doing it, you hit about 15 miles. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're not doing it. And then some of them go out there farther, but then they end up busted axles and doing a lot of stuff that it's just, in which we got to watch it too, but they will break more.
I saw a guy that online, he had an Argo, but he had built for it, custom built, full independent suspension. So he could drive across a log laying on the ground, and that Argo just went straight, and each tire picked up as it went over the log.
Articulated over it.
Yeah. So every tire and axle was full CV axle, which smoothed his ride way out.
That's a lot more moving parts, though.
It is, but you're not rattling that machine like you're rattling it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And then once you've done all that, you know what parts you need to buy to bring extra too.
Yeah.
Right. Versus never having worked on the thing before and, 15 miles in the middle of nowhere.
So like compared to the power in, say, a side-by-side, I'm sure most people are familiar with like 1,000 cc is a real common side-by-side motor, unit of power. So what's that look like in an Argo?
I mean, I think they're getting about 60 to 80 horsepower is all they're doing. They're not doing much. I mean, some of the newer ones are pushing it a little more than that, but they're not. Yeah, they're not. I mean, there are putting some Suzuki motors in there, and I think they're actually getting to 950 motors, so they're getting bigger. But realistically, they're toned down. They're not. You're not screaming that sucker by any stretch of imagination. And it's fan cooled or liquid cooled. So it's. And then plus, I mean, I like mine because I have aluminum cabs. So when I'm sleeping out there in bear country, it's nice to have aluminum hitting you by yourself.
Yeah, I've seen.
Not that a bear couldn't just rip it open like a tinfoil thing, but still, it's nice to have a little.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying. I'm just saying I don't want an Argo. I'm not willing to make that concession.
I'm 100% willing to
the Argo for the amount of.
I came this close last year to selling my 4-wheeler and buying one. Yeah. Real close.
Yeah.
Any one of these years now.
See, to me, it's
when I find the right deal, the 4-wheeler's
I'm also in a place where it's not an Argo or 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff that I do that there's no way I'm going to run that road in 10 miles on an Argo for an evening.
Yeah.
That I can do in 20 minutes on my wheeler. Right.
Yeah.
That's where it really comes to me, where I do that still a lot on my wheeler. So
the other thing too is I really want just one of those 6-wheelers, not the side-by-side 6-wheeler, but just the 4-wheeler with one more axle and 2 more tires. That would be probably a more realistic setup for me to advance into past a 4-wheeler, because there's so much more you can do. And even climbing that super long wheelbase on the 6-wheeler.
Yeah, you're right.
You can climb a lot more
just
stuff.
Don't turn it sideways on the hill.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing is I was in some really, really bad bogs on that, what you're talking about. Yeah. And that 6-wheeler. And I mean, I was pulling a 4-wheeler like a rag doll. Yeah. I mean, it was nothing. Now, I got to admit, I was shocked how well that thing went. I didn't feel any more uncomfortable in it than compared to my Argo with tracks.
Interesting.
I mean, it was, the difference is you couldn't turn on a dime.
Yeah.
And it's great going straight. But if you have to do much and start turning, that's when you're going to have problems because you have,
You don't have that control level.
you don't have that control. So
Yeah.
you have them 4 driving forward, and you have 2 in the front that are just sort of laughing at you when you want to turn. And so
Right.
you're doing the 25-point turn to turn it around. But
It doesn't have front wheel drive included in
it
the-
has front wheel drive. But when you have 4 perfectly lined up, biting down
I see
with
what
all
you
your
mean.
weight,
Okay.
they just, front tires just don't.
They're
you know,
just pushing you forward.
Right.
And those two
Like
are
a
just,
semi with a trailer loaded too far forward.
I see
right,
what you
yeah.
mean.
So
I see.
so you get in a mud hole and you're trying to turn. Yeah, you're not liking it. Compared
I
to
see.
an Argo in a mud hole, it's no big deal. You're just laughing at it.
Right.
Well, someday. What kind of 6-wheeler do you run right now?
A Can-Am.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it 1,000 or is it
Nope, 650.
650?
Yeah, I was told to get a 650, and actually the dealer said, yeah, they actually, the 650 is more sought out after than the 1,000 because it burns a whole lot less gas.
Mm-hmm.
It actually doesn't have heat problems with something with exhaust and going on. And so, yeah, the 650s are, are I guess of the dog, which it hurt my soul because I like power.
Right.
Yeah.
But it comes down to torque when you're talking
Right.
about a 6-wheeler. It doesn't come down to that immediate power.
Yeah, but still, I don't like to be underpowered.
Do you
So
find-
yeah.
Do you find yourself wanting more power ever
Never.
with the 650?
No.
It's always more than enough.
it's always been no more than enough. But I only had it 1 year this last year. But
Okay.
I mean, I worked it pretty hard.
Yeah.
And it was, I definitely like that 650. And
How many miles do you think you have on it to this point since buying it?
just probably about 100.
Okay.
But there was one spot that we went through some crazy bogs.
Yeah.
And it was some sick bogs that I was glad I wasn't getting stuck and getting off because
Yeah, I'll bet.
and then when the 4-wheeler got stuck, I would just back right back to him, give him my rope and make him hang over in front of his.
Right. So I've got a bigger, more powerful wheeler than a lot of people, will run typically. And they say they can go everywhere in their small wheelers until they try to follow me.
Yeah.
And then what do? I back up, I hook up, and I pull them out. Right. Although I'm sure a 6-wheeler is that next step for sure.
That's what I keep hearing. And there's a couple other guys that we all know that run 6-wheelers that we're friends with. That guy's been telling me for years. Oh, it's night and day. Once you go to 6-wheelers, you'll never want another 4-wheeler for the kind of stuff that he's talking about doing. And he's dead right, but
Yeah,
he's
the
got
one
to
that-
find one.
Yeah, he's the one that advised me about getting the 650.
Is he really?
But the dealer, fortunately, the dealer, one of the guys there was buying his own.
Mm.
And so I just told him, whatever he buys, I want the same exact model.
Yeah.
So his special tires,
Oh, gotcha.
his everything, his clutch pack, whatever. Because, I mean, he's the guy working there.
Yeah.
And obviously he got it cheaper, but I'm like, if I'm going to build this, I'm going to build it right.
Yeah.
And so I just had him build exactly the way he built it. and them tires are just, they're animals.
What are they?
I don't remember. I just remember going, whatever he says, I'm not going to do no research, because normally I'm spending literally years researching, figuring all that stuff out.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this guy's been working in the shop for years.
Mm-hmm.
He's seen all these things. He knows this stuff. You know
Right.
what? Follow him.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Have you done any kind of major river crossings with it yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm curious to see what your opinion is on that.
yeah.
If it's real buoyant,
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. That's what limited me this last year because I was a river I really, really wanted to cross, but it was brand new. And last time I crossed a river with a brand new 4-wheeler, it went swimming. So I'm like, not this time, baby.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I think that's still the unknown question out there that every Alaskan is asking: how do you cross rivers with 4-wheelers and 6-wheelers and Argos and and even Sherps?
Right.
It's a roll of the dice every single
I will say,
time.
how do you a way that you can cross rivers better with your Argo? Is that easier to do with a wheeler?
I think a wheeler.
I know I've traveled with guys. I'm riding a wheeler. They're riding an Argo. I can get across places because I'm on the bottom
Mhm.
when they're floating.
Right.
Right. And for them to get across, they've got to haul their winch across so they can start to cross and then winch themselves back over to the bank where they need to get up on it.
Mm.
Right. They got to cross and waders hook up so they can get out. Whereas I can just drive on the bottom of the creek. Now, I can barely cross, but I can cross.
Yeah.
Has been my.
No, I could see that.
You have to start bringing some sandbags, or before you cross the river, just start shoveling mud into the bed of the 6-wheeler.
No, the Argo. The Argo.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm talking about guys with Argos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Getting the weight down.
Yeah.
And then
Interesting.
typically I use like go with the creek,
Yep.
quarter it with the creek.
Don't try to fight it.
Yeah. So you just work your way over, but yeah, it's fun.
Well, let's jump to a quick break here and then we'll get back into it.
Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure.
And we're back. This will be our final segment for this show. And this is kind of the main reason that I wanted to have you on. Because of any of us here, you've got the most snow machine or sled or snowmobile or snow go time or ski-doo time, whatever you want to call it. You have the most time on a sled of any of us. And whether that's midwinter riding, I know you just posted a video of that. You ate a tree and, that's that whole ordeal. You can talk about. But then you've also done a lot of late winter riding / early spring riding looking for grizzly bears. And that's something we've talked about a little bit on the show, that's a great tactic and a good way to cover a lot of country. But there's a lot of perils that are involved with riding a sled around on those kind of conditions. So let's get into just the winter side of it first, not the late winter, early springtime. What do you like to ride? What machines do you prefer? And just tell us a little bit about some of your mishaps or adventures with that.
Well, I ride a Polaris RMK Pro, 3-inch paddle track. Love the paddle, love the power. It's one thing. First thing you learn is that you can't wear your wedding ring, and because when you give it the gas and the skis come off the ground and you're hanging on for dear life, your ring finger will hurt at the end of the day.
Just from gripping that handlebar so hard.
And you're not really a trail sled. You're using steering by the steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And turning the skis. On a mountain sled, you're doing it by your feet. Because most of the time them skis are up. And actually, like if you want to do a Brody, I'm turning left on a Brody. I'll drop my left side down, but I'll actually turn my skis to the right up. And so then when I do my Brodies, because otherwise if you have them straight or down too much, you're going to nosedive it and you're going to go end over the handlebars. And I enjoy doing donuts and stuff, and it's a lot of fun, but it's sort of an awkward thing because you got to teach yourself to turn opposite a little bit.
It's kind of like correcting when you're drifting in your pickup truck.
Right, yeah. Exactly. So that's where there's a lot of difference there. So I love that 800 Polaris light.
Is that turbo?
Nope,
or no?
No turbo.
Okay.
And it has all the power that I need. And someday I wouldn't mind having a nicer one, but I don't know what I would get. Right now it's the sled for me. And it's, she was pretty mad at me because a week ago I rode her, and when I brought her back, I didn't put her in the garage. And so Friday night when it was time to load her up on the sled, she's like, no, you mistreated me this last week. So you are not riding me. So I had to drag her into the shop, and I was having issues. So anyway, never had problems with this snow machine ever. Nothing. So I changed the spark plugs and got it running, got it going, and she forgave me for my sins. And
that's a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke?
That's 2-stroke.
2-stroke.
Yeah,
okay.
You on a mountain sled. 4 strokes are just too heavy and too slow. Yeah. They sound really cool, but they just are too heavy and they're just not responsive enough.
I don't like 4-stroke sleds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So, well, I was going to say some guys like them for long hauling trips where you're on the rivers a lot and you're just towing a lot of weight, and they're way better on fuel. But it doesn't seem like they have all that torque and that immediate dig out power that you have with a 2-stroke sled.
They're heavier. Now, like for a trail sled,
if
you're gas mileage and you want to go, I've been on, 80-mile trips with a bunch of other sleds, and we were basically like an expedition. Then we cut up through the mountains and had a bunch of mountain sleds I was with, and I had my Expedition 900 Ace, and yeah, it did great in gas mileage. We literally come to the parking lot, and they ran out of gas in the parking lot. I could have turned around and did the whole thing, and I would have only been at half tank. I mean, I burned a quarter of a tank when they burned the whole tank.
And I was pulling a sled. Did you run?
That was probably 80 miles or something like that. But it was some tough miles.
And only burned a quarter tank.
Yeah, quarter of a tank.
How many gallons would that be?
2 or 3 gallons. About 3 gallons.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
the two strokes do burn a lot more. Even in the non-mountain sleds, they just burn a lot more.
Right. Yeah. It's you can't. Now I wouldn't when I'm in the mountains and I'm playing. I don't want a 4-stroke because I want power and I want it now and I want light.
Yeah.
Because it's all about that lightness and being able to throw it around and then But I mean, Snowmachines these days they're crazy. They're light.
Yeah.
You roll it over on the side. It's no big deal. You just give it the gas, and while it's on that side, and you slowly tip it up and jump on it, and you drive away.
Just pull itself right out.
Yeah, it's amazing what they can do.
Interesting. You ever been caught in an avalanche?
Nope, never been caught in an avalanche.
You ever had to ride out of a happening avalanche?
Nope. I've been around them a little bit, but I've decided I'm staying away from the mountains. I mean, I'll be in the mountains, but not on the mountain.
Yeah.
Because there's enough rolling hills around. There's enough technical stuff that you can have all the fun you want to have without being stupid.
Yeah.
Because any mountain sled now, any mountain you can see with your eyes, you literally could drive up it. I mean, they're just, they can go up anything. The problem is, if you ever, not if, but when you crash on that hillside, your Snowmachine is going to be in pieces and your body's going to be in pieces. And I like to ride the next week. So it's like slow it down, grasshopper. And so I don't go for the big mountains. And I've had shoulder surgery from jumping a Snowmachine back in my high school days, and actually I had 2 shoulder surgeries because of it. And so
same shoulder or both?
Yeah, same shoulder.
Oh wow!
But one was here in Alaska, and then the other one was down in Washington because I just figured I'd have the guys who know better how to do it. Alaska's just not enough populous to have great doctors. There's some good doctors here, but they're just. Anyway, so but I love to play in the trees. I love to do the donuts and, just play in smaller hills, and there's just still enough. I've been ran over by my own Snowmachine. Yeah. So.
I don't know if I've quite done that one.
Yeah, this one was.
I've flipped them and rolled them and crazy stuff, but I've never run myself over with one.
Yeah. No, this took some really intelligence to do this one. Not normal person wouldn't be this stupid, but.
Was this on your mountain sled?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was climbing up a hillside, and snow was a little too good, and so I seen that I could easily make it up, so I slowed down just to try to make it more technical. And then I realized, oh no, I'm going to get stuck. So I was by a snow curl, so I was trying to throw it off the snow curl to go down. Well, I went to the right hard, and Snowmachine didn't, so I fell off the Snowmachine. Well, the Snowmachine ended up going upside down on the snow curl. The throttle stuck full blast. I don't have a tether on, so I'm standing up there holding the running board to the Snowmachine that's going full blast. I mean, it's just screaming. And I'm pondering life's events. Okay, which way am I going to run because I can't hold this thing up for very long.
Yeah.
And which way am I going to run? Well, just as I had that thought, the snow up from underneath me gave away, and the snow curl gave away, and the whole thing just dropped right on me. Just its track was completely against me. I put my hands across my chest, and I, it just seemed like forever. That track was just burning across my chest. My whole front side was underneath the track perfectly. And I'm thinking, okay, it's just going to roll down the hill because I'm on a steep hill when this is happening. But the ski had stuck.
Oh,
so it's doing this, and finally, I'm like, just keep my arms to myself, because you put your arm in the track, it just grab your arm and rip it right off. Snowmachine can go 130 miles an hour.
Yeah,
and that track is flying. So it finally rolls off, and my leather gloves, it burned through my leather gloves, my Arctic Cat leather jacket, not leather, but riding jacket. It burned through my riding jacket. My shield just had black marks all over it, all the way down my leg. It burned through my riding pants into my Levi's, and I had burn marks down my Levi's, rubber marks.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I was like, okay, note to self, don't do stupid things like that. Have the tether.
Yeah.
So if you fall off, it dies.
My dad bought like a 1998 Scandic or something one time, and it had the tether on it, which on that machine is pointless, right? That machine can't go anywhere. You're not going to be able to run yourself over with that one, right? That thing's too heavy, too slow. But and I had a wrong attitude about tethers because of this, and I'm not faulting him for this, but when he got that machine, he goes, "Oh, this is what you do with that." He cut the cable and he glued the tether into place over the butt, which I understand on that machine. On that machine, it's just an annoying thing, right? It's you can't ride that machine anywhere. You're going to have a problem. But
that's really funny.
That's good.
That sounds like something your dad would do. That's really funny. So then let's jump into a little bit of the later winter riding then. That is something that guys get themselves in some trouble with. I remember reading a book a few years ago now by a fella that he did a little bit of guiding here and there, but mostly just personal hunts all throughout the state. And he talked about actually, hunting for grizzlies at their dens as they were first exiting the dens in early spring. And there's still a lot of snow in the mountains, especially where they're coming out of the dens. But some of the valley floors can have a little bit less snow by that point. The water's starting to open up in some of the rivers and some of the sloughs and the creeks. And so you've got a little bit more hazard than you have in the middle of winter when it's 20 below at night and things are still frozen solid most of the time anyway. So talk a little bit about some of your springtime riding and some mishaps and some different things that you'll encounter riding this time of year as it starts to warm up.
Yeah. One thing to remember is what are you doing? It's if you're going on the four-wheelers and you're going out and play, it's okay for you to get stuck. Yeah. It's fun to get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't get stuck, you didn't ride.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going out there 30, 40, 50 miles on an expedition on a four-wheeler, how are you going to ride? You're going to do everything you can to not get stuck. You're going to stay out of the mud holes because you can't afford to break your axle and your ride to be over. And that's fine on a four-wheeler and stuff like that when survival isn't, you can survive through the, fall nights pretty easy.
Yeah.
Well, you start doing that, 40, 50, 60 miles out there on snow in the mountains, you have to remember, I'm not out here riding in the mountains to play. I'm out here on an expedition to hunt. I have one purpose to, get out there, get my hunt done and get back safely. Mm-hmm. And so it's a completely different mindset where my mountain sled, I have literally bare necessities, bare things I have. Mm-hmm. Well, when I'm going out hunting, it's a completely different world. I'm ready. If something bad happens out there, I have snowshoes, but so what? I'm not going to snowshoe 25 miles back. Yeah. It just, because my trail isn't that good and it's going to be a really tough way to hike back. So it's a different mindset. And that's where most people get troubles is they're just used to going out and play and they don't understand. No, this isn't play no more. This is probably one of the most serious hunts you're going to be on. Mm-hmm. It's not that big a deal as long as you're prepared, but be prepared and don't expect the person next to you to be prepared because they're fallible and human. They can make stupid mistakes. And I'd a lot of times go by myself because I've had more people put me in harm's way than I have by myself. Yeah. I do some stupid things, but it seems like when I'm with other people, I let down my guard and been in some bad spots.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk a little bit about the snow conditions this time of year as we start getting the above freezing temps during the day. Something in that book that I was referencing was he talked about them having to get out early in the morning, cover a lot of ground early, and then, round about early afternoon, the snowpack starts to degrade. And they had to come back after it got cooler in the evening and even into the night and then make their way back out at night. Talk a little about that and the different ways that you've handled that.
Right. Well, big thing to remember is that when the sun's going down, that's when it's the most intensity. Mm-hmm. On the west-facing mountains are going to get a lot of sun. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the heat of the day, and the sun's going to be on that for a long period of time. Yeah. And you have to remember that and remember where you're going in and where you're coming out. Because I figured this out the wrong way. I popped over, went 50 or 60 miles back, and I'm just, my last little ways is only a couple miles. It was west facing. I dropped off into that valley, and buddy, it was an absolute nightmare. It was slush, snotty. I mean, it took me hours to do something in 5 minutes I should have been able to do. Hours. And I was wet, soaking.
Just getting stuck the whole time.
Stuck the whole time. I had my son with me, and we fought through it. We got there. I went to a buddy's cabin, and I didn't even want to go get any wood just because it was so snotty and around there. I'm just like, we don't even need no wood. We just, because it was bad.
Yeah.
And so the next morning, we just jumped up early and got out of there because it gave me a new respect of where, because I dillied on the way in.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, you're pushing this. I got too much in the play mode.
Yeah.
And I forgot that, okay, this is a serious hunt.
Yeah.
Watch what you're doing. Be careful, and I mean, yes, a lot of times when you're hunting like that, the style, some people like to do the spot and stock, sit there and spot.
Yeah.
I have the attention span of a squirrel. So to put me on the side of a hill and make me watch for hours, just shoot me, now if you tell me, hey, go conquer those hills.
Yeah.
I'm all that all day long, but so I have a tendency, I do both because I know, spot and stock is better. I can cover a lot more ground.
Yeah.
But I enjoy covering the ground more,
Yeah.
So it's, you just have to be mindful of where you're at. What's the temperature? Mindful of the fact that the creeks are the warm spot, the moving water, that water's warming up. It's, so you drop into the river bottom and that's going to be a problem. So because you're not on a just joyride for the day, an expedition, you're going to have more gear. You're going to have either a rope along, or you can have, some nice, 1,000-pound twine with some pulleys. You're going to have something because sometime you're going to end up in a creek bottom.
Yeah.
And, and that's the other thing is pack a big shovel.
Yeah.
Biggest shovel you can pack, comfortably. When you have to shovel your way out of an area, and there's sometimes I've had deep trenches.
Build that ramp and
build that ramp
up on top.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing to remember is one thing I always say about Alaska is tough guys die first. And if you're sweating, you're one step closer to dying.
Just from hypothermia.
Yeah. And it just take your stupid clothes off, dress down, and try not to sweat too much. And tough guys were like, oh no, I can handle this. No, it's stupid. Just because once you get dressed, I mean, like I never wear cotton. I'm always polyester or, merino wool or whatever, stuff like that. I never, but even at that, it still takes a while for it to dry. And so just, slow it down and be ready and be mindful of it because that early morning's a great time because you can go everywhere, but don't forget you better be out of there before the night hits.
Yeah.
Because buddy, you might be sleeping out there. And that's, I pack a little sleeping bag with me.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, you're out, what are you doing? You're bear hunting.
Yeah.
Well, you get stuck out there. You're the best smelling thing that bear's going to smell for miles, so it's just, you be mindful of what you're really doing out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you tend to pull a sled behind your snow machine when you're out there bear hunting, or do you just go with a snow machine and just plan on skinning out the bear and putting it on the sled to ride out?
Well, I'd go both. Sometimes I have a tendency to like to pack the sled because it's easy. Once you get out there, you get it, you throw it in there, it's good to go. The problem with it is a sled will always impact you where you go. If you're just going in the plains, it's no big deal. But if you're actually covering some country and you're going up and over mountains and valleys and stuff like them, steep valleys, that sled is going to tear you up. And it's going to fill up with snow, it's going to fill up with ice. And, yes, when the mountain sled, you drive with your feet and you're used to, skis up and going. Well, that's a different story when you're on a trail sled. Plus, when you're on a trail sled pulling a sled, see, how that's hard to say both of them.
Yeah.
Trail sled pulling a sled, it's pulling you opposite of what you think it is. And so it wants you to flip you.
Yeah.
When you get on that steep stuff that you try to angle it one way or another, that sled wants to flip you.
Yeah.
So that's where, if you can time it right, it's better to kill it, skin it out, put it on the back end. But what happens if you shoot it late at night?
Yeah.
Then it's more problematic. So that's one thing that I've been going back and forth on and trying to redesign some sleds, trying to make something different because, that's just part of the fun of hunting is figuring better ways.
Well, the whole other thing with pulling a sled is when you get stuck with that thing,
oh,
it's you unload half of it so you can get it out of
Yeah.
Get the snow machine up on top. Then you can hook the sled back up. Right. It's a whole.
Yeah.
It-
One thing I forgot, the last summer, or last spring, I was way out there, 50 miles out, and then I forgot the most critical piece of thing you always take on every trip: toilet paper.
Oh,
And I always laugh, okay, because during COVID, when all the toilet paper issues, on Facebook, I posted a thing on walking through the woods, and I was showing different things you could use for toilet paper, and my daughter. And my daughters were embarrassed with me, but I'm like, hey, this, every guy has used coat tails, cut them off for toilet
moss.
paper. Yeah,
top
moss.
of a sock.
Yeah, all these things. And, but when I was out there in the mountains, and I'm like way, way out there, and it's way in the deep mountains.
Yeah.
There was no moss. There was no willows. There was no willow leaves. There was nothing. And I'm like, am I going to have to drag my bottom across this crusty snow? And I'm just like, and I'm, hunting stopped really quick, and I'm not for hunting for bear, and I'm hunting for foliage, some foliage, because I'm like, oh no, and it's cold, so I really didn't want to take my coat, undress just to get cut clothing off.
Yeah.
And praise the Lord, I found myself a little cut bank that had some nice moss that had been in the sun.
Nice.
Oh man, I was so happy. I'm like, even took some extra with me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, pack a little extra when you find it.
I grabbed some moss one time. I didn't have any toilet paper with me, and I was close to town. I just hiked into a spot to moose hunt, and I grabbed some moss one time that looked nice and soft, and it wasn't.
Have some rose hip thorns mixed
it
in there.
It wasn't that bad. It just, I don't know what it was. What else was growing in there? It was real scratchy. Real scratchy.
Deep cleaning.
It wasn't Charmin double ply.
No. Well, sometimes, you see that nice green moss. It looks soft. You think it's going to be nice. It's not. Yeah.
I've used that more than once.
Yeah, me too. But
it's better in the early morning or after a fresh rain. I tell you that for a fact.
You're right. Yeah.
It's way better.
The other thing that I think I've told this story on here before, but I was in Southeast, and I thought I had toilet paper with me. And I did. It was in a little plastic bag. It had been in my backpack for years. But it was the end of the roll. It was the end of the roll. And I think I had about one good wipe with what the paper was there. So I ended up using the folded toilet paper roll.
Hey.
You just cut that cardboard into little chunks.
No, I don't know how much detail I want to go into.
I
just, it was a nice, you bend it a little bit and you got a scraper.
I'm tracking.
Yeah.
Get back to the boat and, hey, Dalton, where's your toilet paper at?
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened. Yep.
I remember you were like, hey, you got any toilet paper? I didn't have any, and I'd kind of like to do this again before I sit down on the boat.
That's right.
So talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned that when you go out on your mountain sled, you don't bring much with you except what you need, just the bare essentials. But when you go out, specifically looking for bears coming out of the dens, you bring a lot more stuff, obviously. Mm-hmm. What are the survival items? Now, I know that you mentioned that you were able to get to a friend's cabin at one point on that particular time when you were out there with your son. But say that you don't make it to the cabin, say, or you're not going to make it to a cabin at all, right? You're just hunting, and maybe you're basing out of a lodge somewhere, or worst case scenario, you go out for a hunt and you get stuck. Whether it's an injury or, a mechanical failure of some sort, which can happen out there, say you break down on your machine, but bottom line is you get stuck out there. What do you bring to be able to spend the night out there and not die of hypothermia? Because you can go from 40 degrees during the day to 0 at night very easily and quite often.
Yeah.
And that's without wind chill.
Oh yeah. And then plus 40 degrees, and then plus you get in the bottoms, it can be 10, 20 below. So you can get a 60-degree temperature change. Most of the times I hardly ever hunt around a cabin. That's rare. That one time I did, but pretty well, most times I'm not. But usually I take them some type of shelter, which basically is a tarp. Yeah. That's something that you have your shovel, you can dig yourself down to the, down basically the dirt and whatever, and get yourself some shelter. A lot of people like to do, where I go, there's no trees, so you don't have to worry about a fire. But even a fire, the problem with fires is you'll spend more time and energy
Mm-hmm.
keeping your fire going and feeding it, and then you get wet, and then there's more problem compared to if you have good gear.
Yeah.
You're not worrying about a fire. You're worrying about shelter more than anything.
Yeah.
Make sure you have plenty of water.
Yeah.
Because you'd be dehydrated. Because especially in the middle of Alaska,
Mm-hmm.
Central Alaska here, where it's just extremely dry. It's desert. It's
Yeah.
absolute desert. It sucks the moisture out of you,
Yeah.
and you got to keep that water coming in. My food is always, I can eat it frozen.
Yeah.
I always want, one, I don't want to have water with my food, and two, I want to make it where I can eat it frozen because I don't want to stop to heat up. And yes, I have a stove to make water if I need to, but I don't want to stop for it because I want to. There's another mountain for me to cover. There's another place for me to go. So I have a little sleeping bag, or now I want to check out this new survival bag that actually it has vented. It's a foil bag that actually vented.
Okay. Yeah.
So I want to try that, but I take my sleeping bag with me.
Yeah.
Extra pair of clothes, but you always fine line there because you get too much stuff.
Yeah.
You're weighting yourself down means you can't go in enough areas either.
Yeah.
So you just have to be ready for that. And I take an inReach.
Yeah.
But critical thing about inReach is I don't care how great it is. You still, before you go, send an email.
Yeah.
Send a text to your wife. Have her send it back to you, not the night before, because inReach and Garmin, they have screw ups.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have a glitch. And when you're out there, they're not going to fix your glitch.
Yeah.
You need to do it before you actually leave and not the night before.
Yeah.
And I found out that the hard way. I was able to limp through it, but it just check your gear before you go. So then that way, and then I like to do is I have, I think it's Guardian Angel they called. And so you can actually, they call them for medical purposes, which is nice. And also if you have your snow machine or something go down, they'll come and pick it up, but they won't pick it up for gas. If you ran out of gas, sucks to be you that, you're not going to do nothing. But I like that because part of it is just, knowing when to say uncle, and say, well, you know what, this is a bad trip. I haven't had to do that yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's one of the things that we have to learn. Just, sometimes we need to shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. You ever had to change a belt in the field on one of your machines?
Nope.
No.
Actually, years ago, I had to do that quite a bit for snow machines. Now, any of my new snow machines, I've never had to do it.
They're just better tuned and
they're better. And they're newer. And then I don't ride them as hard.
Yeah.
So I'm just, I ride it like a grandma because I don't want to have to push it.
Yeah.
Do you swap your belt out as a maintenance thing after so many miles or anything?
No,
really.
I'm about to a point I probably should.
Yeah.
I mean, my Expedition is a 2018, so it doesn't have a lot of miles on it. It probably is 1,500 miles, so it doesn't have a lot. But went on a big bison hunt with it. Did a bunch. I guess it probably have more like 1,800 miles on it. But I mean, it's been a great snow machine. It's just it's underpowered. It's a 900 Ace. It's the exact wrong year. It's a great trail sled for little Susie going up to a cabin, but it's not a great hunting one because it doesn't have enough power.
Those Expedition Extremes they came out with probably right after you bought that one. I've talked to some guys who run them, or even the Polaris Titans, the Titan Adventures. I mean, I've talked to guys that have run them, and they're talking about running mountain type stuff on that big heavy sled, and they say it just floats.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure you can still get them stuck.
Yeah.
But,
and they're all, everybody's has. I know I have a friend that he had a Expedition Extreme, and he has a trap line, blah blah blah, and he didn't like it. Deep powder, he's having troubles with it.
Really,
and it makes no sense because he's a pretty good rider. So I mean, I don't know why.
It all comes down to the person too,
and situations, and just where he's at. Because I mean, I've been going downhill on my Expedition with a 900 Ace, and I had to put it in low range because it was dogging down, and it was crazy. And so that's one thing I've seen is mine's so high geared that I have to put it in low range, which then burns my gas mileage.
Yeah.
So when I'm pulling a load and stuff, so that's where I would like to switch because right now I have 20-inch wide track, long track, that 900 Ace. I would actually like to switch to a 16-inch and maybe even go from a 155, 154 to maybe a 174. And the reason is just because if I have to get it out, I could that Expedition. I mean, I rolled it over on its side one time, And I thought, well, let me just see, because how I can put this back on, back on the skis.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I
These
couldn't
weigh 600 pounds, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And then, I ended up having to take a rope along and take it back down. Well, praise the Lord, I had a willow nearby.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where, compared to, other snow machines that are a little lighter. So if I'm going to go by myself, I do see that I'm going to need to drop back to a 16-inch, maybe go a little longer, But the other problem you have to be careful with is you need it to be fan cooled and liquid cooled. Because if it's just liquid cooled and you have no snow in that early morning, it's nice and hard, you're liking life, but your snow machine's overheating.
Right.
And I've had a lot of people with their snow machines overheat, and we're stopping every few minutes because there's literally no snow on that radiator. And so they're shutting down. And that's really dangerous because you see a bear and you're like, all excited, and your engine overheats. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to do something stupid, and you're going to push it and blow it up, and and then where you're at, Most of them shut you down, but still, it's just, there's no perfect snow. That's what my wife's like, just buy the one snow machine that does it all. I'm like, well, dear, there is no one snow machine that does it all.
Yeah.
I had the same conversation with my coworker the other day about guns.
Yeah, I was just
Like,
going to
say, I want an AR for self-defense that I can also hunt good with. And I'm like, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to hunt deer, sure.
Yeah.
But you're not going to build that and then still like have a great moose rifle. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, you'll have it great at one thing and adequate for other things, but you're never going to have the perfect blend.
I mean, to have, he's like, well, I could do 308, and I was like, yeah, but then what are you going to do with your barrel length? You either got a long barrel or a short barrel. Even a mid-length barrel, you're going to limit your range to very, very short.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Relatively short compared to what you could have with a more traditional bolt hunting rifle.
But as soon as you've got a 20-inch barrel on an AR, that ain't a self-defense gun anymore.
Yeah.
It's too long.
I mean, yeah, it's starting to get there, especially if you put a suppressor on it. But yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting. We hadn't had the chance to get somebody on here to talk about some of that, more detailed things and people that have been there, done that. I have not done much sled riding the last couple of years. I just haven't. I have some plans to try to get out and do that here the end of this winter. Go out there and run to a spot that you and I have talked about, just for fun. I suppose if I saw a grizzly bear coming out of a den, I'd be tempted, but it'd have to be the right bear. It's not. I don't know. To me, it's not as much of a draw to just zoom around and find one and shoot it, unless it's a tank. If it's a tank, then you bet your bottom dollar I'll shoot it.
It's a lot harder than it sounds.
Well, yeah.
There's not a lot of people get them, and I mean, it's it is. There's a lot of challenges to it, and I mean, I enjoy it because it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean, you are just in the mountains having the time of your life. And it's really a great ride, and you get a big bear, nice. One time I was first time I ever was out spring. I was actually riding the mountains with mountain sleds, and we seen a den, and we're like, okay. And so then we got on some tracks and followed the tracks. So pretty soon the tracks crossed our tracks. So then we knew, okay, yeah, we're on it. So we're zipping, we're cruising up and over a hill, and all of a sudden I'm just barreling up a hill, and all of a sudden here, row. And I'm thinking, that's it, I'm dead. That's a bear. And what it was is my buddy, his snow machine is piped up. And he just hit a jump next to me, so his pipe was right by my helmet. I mean, there's no way a bear's going to be that noisy over my machine, doing it. But when you're timid already and all of a sudden you hear a growl, you're thinking, that's it, I'm dead.
Yeah.
So, but it is fun. It's neat to see. It's a lot of beautiful country, and
you can cover so much ground,
right.
And especially if you have good enough conditions and the right sled, you can cover so much ground in such a little amount of time. Like you said, what would usually take you 5 minutes to just rip through, took you and your son, was it a couple of hours just to slog your way through? So as long as conditions are right, you can just cover a lot of miles, and that's how guys find their bears in the springtime. Is if they can cover enough ground to find them. But
yeah, I mean, I think most I've done in 2 days, like 240 miles. So you're covering some ground. And, and I got to admit, it's hard to not get distracted because it's just, you're having a kick of a time. And it's fun. So it's a lot of fun thing to do.
Yeah. Well, great.
You ever do any long, like multi-day excursions to one point to another on sleds?
Only time I ever did that was on a big bison hunt.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. When I did that, that was 9 days. But yeah, it
Gotcha.
was. So yeah, and it's nice because then you can, I'll have an Arctic oven tent. Have actually 2 different Arctic oven tents. They're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
They are.
Did you end up shooting a bison on that hunt?
Yes, I did.
That's right. How did I forget about that and not include that in here?
Yeah. It was. I was hoping to do it in 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And we got caught in a blizzard, and we had the harebrained idea of, no, we don't want to go when the Iditarod trail is being cut through there because we don't want to fight all the sled doggers. Well, the error in that thought process is the fact that when the sled dog race is going on, that trail will always be there.
Yeah.
They have all them workers all along the way, all the gorges, all the rivers, everything has these nice crossings. Well, I had just missed it because I'm like, we'll just go a few days after them. So they're all out of their way. And there's a blizzard of a century that hit. And I mean, we finally made it to Rainy Pass Lodge like 2 or 3 days in blizzards. I mean, it was horrible. A plane actually crashed into the canyon up there.
Oh,
and
really?
They were trying to find that person. And it was after 5 days, I think 4 or 5 days, I was turning around saying, forget it. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to, forget. I'm going to go back and I'll take a plane to McGrath and do that. It's going to be expensive, but that's a better way to go.
Yeah.
And so the guy I was with, I just met him because my main buddy, Marty, was supposed to go on the trip, but he got sick and another guy got sick. So it went from, 5-man trip to a 4-man trip to a 2-man. And so this guy I've never met, all of a sudden we're out there. Just met him on the trail and we're going, and Jerry was his name. He's a spectacular guy. You couldn't have picked a better person to go with, good temperament. But after 5 days, we're like, forget it. I'm turning around. And then we turned around, the blizzard stopped. And we got about 20 miles back, and another couple guys come up, said, hey, you got to go with us.
Yeah.
So we did. And then went right out, got a nice big bull.
Wow.
There was, but I think Denzel Gorge, my buddy, he was going across a river crossing, and the ice was really slick, and he went off into the creek, fell in like 4 feet into the creek, busted his ankle. So then we had to jump down into the creek bottom and with axes and stuff like that, and rope along that snow machine back out of there. Oh, it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
So turned out to be a 9-day hunt. And I got a nice big bison, but, so it was funny when I was out there caping this thing out. I in-reached my wife and I said, okay, dear, I've never asked to have a mount, any animal mounted. Of all the moose I've shot and everything else, blah, blah, but never mounted any animals.
Yeah.
I said, but I've never worked so hard for an animal in my life.
Yeah.
And so, if you don't mind, I'd like to, to get a mount for this. And we've been having an argument before that about the size of a house. And she goes, our house just got a little bit bigger, didn't it? It's like, yeah. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, that's that Arctic oven tent was just lifesaver.
Yeah. Did you run studs on your track for that trip?
Nope, but I will not do another big trip without studs. I will not buy a snow machine that I cannot put the studs in.
I ran a sled with studs on it. It was a 2013 Skidoo GSX with a 900 Ace, and it had studs on the tracks. Now, I didn't like the 900 Ace for that sled. It's a short track racing sled. It does not fit it.
No.
Granted, I was blown away by what it was still capable of doing, especially with the studs, right? I could put a sled behind it with 150, 200 pounds in it and climb a hill just because it had the capability versus, I'm used to at that point in my life, I was used to like a year 2000, 400 pound Polaris.
Is that the old red Indies? Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. And I still love those old sleds. But,
nice sled.
But anyway, it's the studs. I was blown away.
Yeah, that's why I want a Tundra Extreme, but you can't put studs in it.
I know somebody. Really?
Yeah, you cannot put studs. That's what Compo said. Nope, they cannot put studs in it. Otherwise, I was going to buy one. I'm like, that's it.
Really?
I'm buying one but you can't put studs in them
Huh.
with the nice paddle
It's too-
tracks they have. It's
The
just
paddle
too
track's
much.
too narrow and all that.
Just not enough. There's not enough clearance.
Huh.
And so they like do not put studs in it. And it hurt my little feelings.
Hmm.
So I was dying for studs in that thing.
Ah, interesting. Well, what's your bucket list look like these days? You've killed a bison. You've I guess you talked about it earlier. You kind of want revenge on the brown bears. It sounds like anyway.
Yeah, that's the big one. Every year I put in for the Kodiak bear hunt.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping to go back there.
Yeah.
And yeah, other than that, just doing hunts. Someday I would like to do Africa, but it's not that big of a deal. But I don't know. I just like hunting.
Yeah.
Now I've been challenged because with that moose last year not talking well to me,
Mhm.
that hurt my feeling more than anything else. Because the year before, literally, I had moose following me in my Argo down hillsides because they figured out that I was their true love, and it was, so, but that's, I enjoy that. I love to talk, get a moose talking, get him worked up and shut him down. And
So let's go ahead and talk about that for a second.
Okay.
That was something that I meant to mention earlier, but since we've kind of covered everything else we were going to talk about today, let's go ahead and end this with a little bit of moose hunting, moose calling technique. What do you prefer for, let's say, prime season, right? You were talking about like the middle of the month and on is when you start calling them, like from the 10th and on is when you start getting responses. So do you prefer to predominantly cow call? Do you predominantly bull call? Or do you kind of mix it up? Some guys are very, polar one way or the other.
Yeah.
What's your preference?
I'll actually start September 1st.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very quiet.
Mhm.
I'm very selective. I don't do it very often. I do it just quite loud enough so they can hear me. And
Do you cow call early in the month?
Always cow.
Okay.
Yeah, I always do a cow, but usually when I do the bull is when I got a cow. I got a bull and he's not wanting to come in.
Hmm.
And because male's a male,
Mm-hmm.
all males are the same,
Yeah.
and there's two things we really like. We like sex and we like to fight.
Yeah.
And they are just literally one heartbeat away from the other.
Yeah.
And so you get them all worked up and thinking, you're his true love, but he doesn't really know. He's a little timid because he's a
Mhm.
big bull. And then you go to a bull scrape or do a bull call. Oh, buddy. Well, first I'll do is I'll call, cow call. And then if he's not responding well to me and he's starting to get a little timid,
Mhm.
I'll cast my voice away from him like I'm
Mhm.
walking away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do that a few times. Then he's like, oh, no, wait a second here.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
males like a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, if that doesn't work, my next thing is then I jump right into a bull. Either bull call, I typically just jump to a scrape because it's hard to screw a scrape up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once I do that, that's usually when they lose their mind because they're like, whoa, she is mine. What?
Yeah.
And then you got them. Once they've lost their mind and, it's just, we've seen guys, once they're ready to fight, it don't matter what girls buy them.
Mm-hmm.
What the true love can be right next to them. You're not going to stop that guy from fighting.
Yeah.
And that's once they snap, you got them and they go completely stupid and they have a really tough time. And so I've had it. My son was down below me and I seen this bull and I knew he wasn't legal and he's about a mile and a half, 2 miles out. And I give him a call and his ear perks up and I'm like, okay, I got you. And then I give him another call and he starts walking. It takes him about 45 minutes to walk to me. And he gets right to the base of my hill. And then my son, who's another couple hundred yards away from here, scrapes. He's walking through the willows. He don't know that this moose is there.
Mm-hmm.
And the moose loses his mind and he's just ripping trees down, and so I'm thinking this is great fun. I'm thinking, oh, this is so cool. I'm getting to watch this. And so then the moose comes and surrounds him, checks him out, and then finally runs away. And he finally scares the moose away. So he's happy because the moose is, harassing him. And the moose is running away. And so I'm in one spot. My son is straight in front of me, probably about half a mile. And then the moose is about 40 yards from him, running away from him. So I'm like, you know what? I wonder if I can turn that moose around.
Yeah.
So I do a cow call, and he stops dead in his tracks. and he turns around, and my son throws up his hands going, what are you doing? Stop. I finally got this moose away from me. Leave me alone. So, and it's fun. I just,
Yeah.
The one thing I've seen is, take your time calling.
Yeah.
Don't call there's never, I can't say it's never. It's a big mistake is people call too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just don't call, when you think you should call, wait a little bit longer,
Mm-hmm.
How
How long in between cow calls do you usually go? Like once you start up a session in the evening, how long do you usually wait if you haven't gotten a response yet?
Usually about 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, and I'm very timid on that because, they will, if you're overzealous,
Yeah.
they're not that stupid.
Yeah.
Unless you perk their attention, you got to first tease them a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you're just sitting there squallering like a pig,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I know who and what you are.
Yeah.
And so and I like, it's a good thing to is call after night.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
when it's get dark,
Yep.
don't just sit there and call and call and call and call and call.
Yeah.
Just do one call just so he remembers that all night long. And I've had
Mhm.
that in the morning. They've come in charging and just all night long they were thrashing
Yeah.
bushes out there. And
Yep.
I'm thinking, what kind of stupid am I? Why did I do that by camp? And
Yeah.
but literally right at sunrise, he come charging in and
Yeah.
put him down.
How often have you called in cows inadvertently while you're trying to call in a bull? Like just with cow calls, have you had cows come in just curious and wanting to know what's up?
It happens quite often. I'm just like, it was funny. Last year when I was way out in the mountains, in the middle of a blizzard,
Yeah.
way away from everybody else, and I'm calling, and a cow comes in on me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm literally tucked into this little bush because I'm just trying to stay warm. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
freezing my little Ninskis off, and I'm thinking, oh, this is stupid. What kind of stupid am I? That cow, she had to come right up to me because she's like, buddy, you got me out of my bed.
Yeah.
You're going to, acknowledge me in my existence because,
Yeah.
she wanted to come, she come pretty close too. She's
Huh.
just like, hey, and I made sure she could see me, but they come in quite often, but
Yeah.
which I typically love them. I like to have them cows
Mhm.
around me
Yep.
because,
That's the real McCoy.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm trying to imitate her. Well, she's the real her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's something that I find interesting because I remember when I was starting to get into more and more moose hunting, and I'm still not, I'm by far from the world's greatest moose hunter, and that's why I like whenever I meet somebody like yourself or like my father-in-law and guys that have called in a lot more moose, I'm always trying to hear, what do you call? Like, how do your sequences differ than what I might have been trying? And then what are your results? And that's something that the more I've tried to experiment with different types of calling, the more moose by volume that seem to come in. And it's not just calling in bulls. Like last year, I probably called in, I don't know, I suppose when I was, before I was guiding that hunt, my wife and I were hunting together and I called in a half a dozen cows
Mhm.
to the one bull that I called in. Now this was the beginning of September and I was not real hopeful that I was going to bring in a bull. And this was the first week of September. It was warm. It was too warm. I didn't, I wasn't hearing any activity, and this wasn't the world's greatest spot either necessarily. That there's moose there,
Mhm.
but they get some pressure and they get hunted and they know what hunting is and they know where the hunters are and they know when to come out just before dark. And I was trying to bring out a bull and the last fellow that I'd been with on a moose hunt, he was a really good moose caller, and he was able to bring out bulls. Once he heard them respond once, he would just immediately resort to imitating their exact grunt.
Yeah.
You have that kind of rock in the water, kind of that bloop. That's really hard to imitate. I still haven't figured out a way to imitate that exact grunt yet. But there's a couple of different grunts, and so he would do that, and whenever he would imitate that grunt, the bull would just come right in. And that because he explained it like they think it's a bull similar to their size, so they're not afraid to come in and try to go head to head with them. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds good in theory, right? But he would predominantly just grunt and scrape with a shoulder blade or one of those fiberglass moose horns, the classic moose horn that you can buy at Sportsman's Warehouse. And that's what I, primarily use, just because I can call with it, I can magnify my sound, and I can scrape with it. It's just handy to have an all-in-one. And I ended up bringing this bull out just from light scraping, and he was in full velvet. And he just came out. He didn't grunt until a couple minutes before he exposed himself. And it didn't end up coming together for a shot. It was almost dark, situation just didn't go well. But my wife was with me, and both of us were kind of shocked to have called in a bull at that spot that early in the season. But I just remember thinking how odd it was over the last couple of years that the more calling experimenting I've done, the more cows I seem to bring in as well as bulls. And that doesn't seem to be very common with a lot of guys. They don't seem to bring in a lot of cows. And I always just kind of thought that if you're calling for moose, you're only going to bring in a bull. But it doesn't seem to be the case,
Yeah, and one thing I've heard with bulls, sometimes they'll do a oi.
Yeah.
And it's just a really, really high, quiet oi. And it's really, I can't even pronounce it. And now, like when I hear it out there, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a bull just saying, hey,
Yeah.
But that oi it's really cool. And that's where, like one time it was like September 5th. And I was out with, had this young kid with me hunting. And I call in the morning at a camp, and then nothing. And we wait a little bit. Then we conquer the mountain, go everywhere. We're like, it's Sunday morning. We're like, hey, we can get to church. This is early enough. We can get to church. So we're breaking down our tent. 45-inch bull moose comes right across the creek from us, 30 yards away.
Yeah.
I shoot, blow his heart up. He drops to a knee, and he's still looking past us. He's like, where's she at?
He's still locked on.
He's still locked on. He's just like, where is she at? Like I always tell the teenage boys, that burning in your side, you think's love? No, you're dead. You are dead. Run for the woods, boy. You are dead. You're bleeding out. And so, yeah, he dropped to his knee. His heart was gone.
Yeah.
And he ended up running in the woods about 45 yards, and had to drag him out of there. But yeah, it was, it's once they snap, once they're doing it, they're it's a fun. I just enjoy that, and a lot of people say, well, how stupid moose are. And I always ask them, how many moose have you gotten?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy when it's going good, but it's difficult when it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than people think,
It's just so much fun calling them in.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a constant evolution of your calling. And, and for so many years, well, just like you said, you've gone so many years where you've just had them just lock onto you, and it almost seems easy. And then one year it doesn't work quite right. And so now you're just enjoying the process of just trying to figure out exactly what you need to do to change it.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, and that's why a couple years earlier, I taught my nephew how to call. And actually I thought he had a better call than I did. And so I was teaching some things, doing some things, and he was calling in bulls. And actually one bull, he got a little too excited, so we had to run from the bull. It wasn't legal, and so it's like, okay, let's get out of here. And we traveled like 2.5 miles away, and he come following us around. And and it was fun. And he ended up getting a big bull. But it was fun to see that and experience it, but also be learning.
Right.
Always learn. Always, like you're saying, once you hear that moose talking, it reminds you, okay, here's some of the noises, here's some things. And, now I have been by a cow when she's called, and that scared the sneakers off me.
Isn't that crazy? The amount of volume they can produce in that bellow, it sounds like it's reverberating inside their rib cage almost. It is a wild sound to be close to a cow when she bellows.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And I was bow hunting, and I was so poor I didn't have a pistol on me, because I didn't have a pistol. I just had a bow, and I'm like, oh, this is not good. What kind of stupid am I?
Oh boy. Well, I think on that note, thanks for coming on the show, Mr. Clark.
No,
it's
my
great
pleasure.
having you.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime.
Sounds good.
Well, folks, if you like the podcast and like what we're doing, please leave us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And if you'd like to, leave us a good review. We'd like to hear from you. If you'd like to contact us with any questions or comments about the show or anything that you'd like to hear featured on the show, you can go ahead and go to our website, thenorthernhunter.com, and use the Contact Us button there to reach us via email. You can also shop from any one of our 5 sponsored discount codes to buy any of their products and get a discount on those. And our 6th sponsor is Weatherby Rifles. No discount code there, but feel free to check out one of the oldest and finest gun makers in America. And you can also purchase some Northern Hunter logo wear, hats, hoodies, and t-shirts on our website as well to help support us and keep the show rolling. But again, I think the most beneficial thing you can do is just share the show with your friends. If you know of anybody that you think would enjoy the show and hear about Alaska hunting and hear some of the stories and guests that we have on, we got a lot of fun stories, and we have quite the queue of guests coming up here too through the spring and through the summer. So we're looking forward to that. But thanks for the support. Thanks for listening to the show. And I suppose we'll wrap this one up and we'll see you guys next week. So until then, get out there, get after it, and good luck.